Chapter 364. What's wrong with you guys? Why did you let the pleated sword out? Didn't I tell you guys not to let the pleated sword leave the hospital before he fully recovers? What the hell are you guys doing? Lu Lei scolded the doctors that followed him. The pleated sword spirit was the spiritual sword-level sword-bearer responsible for guarding Fort Yuyang. During the retreat of Fort Yuyang, the pleated sword spirit was always at the front. After all the sword-bearers had retreated, he was the last to leave Fort Yuyang through the quantum teleportation array. He even activated the self-destruct mechanism at the end to prevent Yuan Ko from using the teleportation array to enter Yuzhong City. Although the pleated sword spirit had lost Fort Yuyang, it couldn't be said that he didn't fight with all his might. Therefore, Lu Lei ordered the pleated sword spirit to stay in the hospital until he fully recovered. In the end, the pleated sword spirit actually ran into the conference room. Looking at the various fluids and needles on his body, he probably ran out from the medical chamber. Sir Yun Xiao, since you guys are having a meeting, why didn't you bring me along? I participated in the entire battle. Who else here has a better right to speak than me? The pleated sword spirit looked around. Everyone who came to the meeting didn't speak. Indeed, if they wanted to ask about the situation of the battle, there was no one more suitable than the pleated sword spirit. You. Lu Lei sighed. Doctor, how's the pleated sword spirit? Can he stay here for a while? No problem. Sir Yun Xiao only suffered some superficial wounds, it's not a big deal. The doctor quickly replied. Actually, even without the doctor, the pleated sword spirit's strong physique would be able to heal his wounds in a few days. That's good. Bai Rui, tell us what exactly happened in this battle. How did the Yuyang fort fall in less than an hour? Don't you know that you've already made history? The fastest time Fort Yuyang fell was set by you, the pleated sword spirit. Speaking of this, Zhu Wudao was furious. In the past, the Yeyang fortress had lasted at least 2 to 3 hours, but now it had been breached within an hour. Those guys in Yanjing City could boast about it for the rest of their lives. They came too suddenly. We had no warning at all. When Bai Rui said this, there was still a trace of fear left on her face. Our fort's radar and the 32 beacon towers on the periphery didn't detect any trace at all. It was as if they had appeared out of thin air in this world. That's right, this feeling is similar to the quantum teleportation circle. They seem to have arrived near Fort Yuyang through the teleportation circle. That's why we were caught off guard. Half of our troops were still reorganizing in the city, but the Yuan Shun had already broken through the city gates. We didn't even have the chance to defend the city walls, so we were immediately routed. If it weren't for the quantum teleportation formation, I'm afraid only a dozen of us would have escaped. You're talking about the teleportation circle. Zhu Wudao's heart skipped a beat. He immediately questioned one of the officials below him. Formation Defense Department, has our large-scale space restriction formation lost its effect? The large-scale space restriction formation was an array set up by humans to restrict Yuan Ko's teleportation magic. It was unknown how Kunzu had invented it. This array relied on dimensional crystals to activate. Once it was activated, it could isolate large-scale teleportation magic within a 500-kilometer radius. As a result, Yuan Ko had to assemble 500 kilometers away and then march on land to attack the base city. Otherwise, many Yuan Ko, who could use Yuan Ko's teleportation magic, could launch a surprise attack on the base city at any time and from any place. If the base city was breached every few days, humans wouldn't be able to reproduce for the next 1,000 years. But it's possible. This space restriction formation is only effective against teleportation magic. It has no effect on natural rifts like dimensional rift. The official replied loudly, reporting, Chairman. The large-scale space restriction formation is operating well. There are no problems, and there is no possibility of it losing its effect. Then how did they teleport over? Zhu Wudao banged the table hard. Are you going to tell me that they teleported over using their special ability? Apart from being unable to restrict dimensional rifts, the large-scale space restriction formation could not restrict pure special abilities like teleportation. Teleportation was a human's special ability and did not belong to the scope of magic. Perhaps they came here through teleportation. The pleated sword spirit paled when she heard the word teleportation. If my memory serves me right, I should have seen the perverted sunspot just now. Perverted sunspot! Lu Lei exclaimed in surprise. Impossible! Didn't the Freedom Metropolis never participate in the matters between us and Yuan Ko? How could they attack our fortress? No, the Freedom Metropolis has already attacked us. Although the ones attacking us this time look like some demonic beasts, their whereabouts cannot be hidden from my thousand-eye sword. The thousand-eye sword spirit saw clearly that not only are there perverted sunspots hiding among these demonic beasts, but there are also the super electromagnetic gun, updraft, thermostatic reaper, and fantasy killer. You know their status in the Freedom Metropolis. They can be said to represent the entire Freedom Metropolis. The Freedom Metropolis has officially declared war on us, the pleated sword spirit said through gritted teeth. At the same time, the entire conference room began to clamor. Everyone was whispering. They simply could not believe that the one attacking the Yang fortress this time was actually the Freedom Metropolis Yuan Ko. The Freedom Metropolis was a completely different existence in the Yuan Ko community. Other Yuan Ko factions and humans were absolute enemies, and they could not wait to completely destroy each other. They were mortal enemies who had been fighting for 1,000 years. Although 95% of Yuan Ko entered the world, they were instinctively branded with the filth of fighting humans to the death and destroying humans. There were some special Yuan Ko. However, there were some special Yuans that didn't have any hostility towards humans after entering this world. They even had some sympathy for humans and wanted to fight alongside them. During the most difficult times for humans, it was these Yuan Ko that gave humans a hand, allowing humans to hold on until Kanzu achieved Jiandi and led humans to fight back. Therefore, humans called these Yuanwis the Free Yuanwis. Later on, the word Yuanwis was removed and became the term for the free. Later, the free people, Yuan Ko, and humans reached an agreement. They could move freely on Earth, but they would not participate in any battles between humans and Yuan Ko. They would also not help either side between humans or Yuan Ko. They would always maintain a neutral attitude. These free people built a city that belonged to them, the Freedom Metropolis, in the no-man's land of the Caucasus. For hundreds of years, the free people, the sword-bearers, and Yuan Ko had maintained a state of peace. Apart from the occasional travel, the free people rarely left the Freedom Metropolis. But this time, the Freedom Metropolis actually took the initiative to attack the humans' fortress. This was something that had never happened in hundreds of years. During the arduous sword era, when the humans were at their weakest, the Freedom Metropolis had always maintained peace with the humans and never attacked them. This was a major event that could shake the entire upper echelons of humanity and make them feel uneasy. It was a major event that could change history and destroy humanity. Legend had it that there were 200-level Yuan Ko in the Freedom Metropolis, which was equivalent to 2 Emperor-level sword-bearers. Their strength might not be very high, but once they joined Yuan Ko, humanity would inevitably face a more dangerous situation in the future difficult sword era. How is that possible? Why would the Freedom Metropolis attack us? Why did they tear up the contract? Why is that impossible? Don't forget that the people of the Freedom Metropolis were originally Yuan Ko. It is not strange for them to return to their original camp. I said that Jiandi should not have let the Freedom Metropolis go. He should have taken advantage of their weakness and killed them all. There was a lot of discussion in the audience. Everyone was shocked by this explosive news. Some pessimistic people even felt that the crisis of mass extinction was coming. Silence. All of you, silence. Zhu Wudao slammed the table, and the entire table was instantly broken into two by Zhu Wudao. The Freedom Metropolis is not that scary. Compared to the number of prehistoric Yuan-Ko, even if all the Freedom Metropolis joined Yuan-Ko's camp, it would not be a big deal. Humans can resist it. What are you guys shouting about? Zhu Wudao's authority instantly silenced the entire room. Ahem, let me say a few words. The situation might not be as bad as we think. Lu Lei coughed a few times. With the pleated thousand eyes, no Yuan-Ko or free people can escape her eyes. Even if they are hidden in the void, thousand eyes can easily see them. In other words, the only people who participated in the attack this time were the perverted Sunspot, Updraft, Death God, and the Phantom Killer, right? That's right. The pleated sword spirit nodded. Thousand Eyes didn't see anyone else. Very good. I think things shouldn't be bad enough to start a war with the Freedom Metropolis. Since these free people are hiding among the demonic beasts, it means that they are still trying to cover their tracks. They are not willing to start a war with us. At least, they are not willing to start a war with us openly. Lu Lei's words were very reasonable, and everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Since the free people were still trying to cover up, it meant that the situation was not bad enough to start a war directly. At that moment, the minister in charge of managing communications suddenly said to Zhu Wudao, "Chairman, there is a communication from the sword-bearer's personal terminal requesting to connect to you." Unless one knew Zhu Wudao's personal communication number, all communications that attempted to talk to him would be transferred to the artificial platform. "No, I'm hanging up. I don't have the American time." Zhu Wudao refused immediately. "Chairman, it's best if you take it." The minister gulped. "According to the number, the holder of this personal terminal should be a sword-bearer who has gone missing in Fort Yeyang. It's from the missing sword-bearer." Everyone who heard the news instantly focused their attention on the Minister of Communications. Most of the missing sword-bearers were in Yuan-Ko's hands, which meant that this communication was most likely from the free people. "Sure. It's a good sign that they are willing to communicate," Lu Lei said with a smile. Chapter 365. Ever since the news of Fort Yuyang's fall had been spread to Gohan's team, bits and pieces of other news had also reached them. 4/5 of the sword-bearers had returned safely. This news made Gohan and the others relax a little, but the loss of more than 100 people was still not a small one. Iwenjun, on the other hand, was no longer calm. He had lost contact with Uncle Huang. Uncle Huang had recovered from the medical pod the day Iwenjun boarded the train, but he was not qualified to follow the team to Changyang Mountain. Iwenjun's qualifications had been specially approved by Lu Lei. Uncle Huang was only an old sword-bearer, so he had no right to go to Changyang Mountain to participate in the trial left behind by Zhetian Jiandi. Uncle Huang knew his place, so when Iwenjun went to Fort Yuyang to fix the sword lady, Uncle Huang took the initiative to leave the team. He planned to stay in Fort Yuyang and return to Yuzhang City with the team. Iwenjun did not ask him to stay. Uncle Huang was old, and he should stay in the city and enjoy his life instead of following Iwenjun around. Iwenjun happily said goodbye to Uncle Huang and left Fort Yuyang. Who would have thought that the second day after they left, Fort Yuyang would fall? Iwenjun begged the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit to check if Uncle Huang was among the 400 people who had escaped. However, the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit contacted the base twice and found that there was no signal at all, so it no longer cared about the matter. 4/5 of the sword-bearers escape. Uncle Huang's chances of survival are very high. Iwenjun could only comfort herself with these words and silently pray for Uncle Huang's safety. Iwenjun's days were filled with apprehension and suspicion, while Gu Han's days were filled with clouds and fog, layers upon layers of fog. First of all, Gu Han had been puzzled by a certain detail in the Heroes Begin with Insignificance dungeon. He had thought that this detail was very strange and he could not understand it no matter how hard he thought about it. However, the moment he heard that Fort Yuyang had been attacked, Gu Han came to a sudden realization. He was shocked to realize that he had actually been warned about the possibility of an attack on Fort Yuyang. That was I Ching's very serious request that Gu Han depart for Changyang Mountain within 5 days. Gu Han did not understand why. Additionally, after exiting the Instance Dungeon, he had to go through 2 consecutive days of sect challenges. Thus, Gu Han had to spend a great deal of his energy and stamina. This made Gu Han sleep for another day and night. When he woke up, he was shocked to find that there was less than a day left before the 5-day departure. Fortunately, due to a freak combination of factors, Gu Han finally set off within 5 days. Regarding this, Gu Han couldn't understand. Until now, Gu Han suddenly realized that I Ching had already known that Fort Yuyang would fall under Yuan Ko's attack. That was why she had requested Gu Han to depart within 5 days. If Gu Han had set off on the 6th day, then Gu Han would have arrived at Fort Yuyang today. When Yuan Ko attacked, Gu Han would most likely be in Fort Yuyang, and his life would be in danger. Thinking about it, this was too frightening. 700 years ago, Zhejian Jiandi already knew exactly when Fort Yuyang would fall. Even the desolation level Yuan Ko Yahweh's great prophecy spell would not be able to reach this level of accuracy. What happened to Zhejian Jiandi in the past? What does it have to do with me? Gu Han continued to speculate. The most likely possibility was that Gu Han had traveled 700 years in the future and met Zhejian Jiandi. They might have even fallen in love. That was why he had left so many things related to him and set up so many backups. Then there was a new problem. If he really traveled to the past, could he return to the present? Why wasn't there any trace of him in the past? Would the world change because of him if he returned to the past? Would the world remain the same or not? All in all, this was a series of profound, deep, and complicated questions that Gu Han wouldn't be able to answer even if he spent the rest of his life thinking about them. Fortunately, Gu Han didn't need to waste time on these questions. This was because a new problem had arisen. This problem came from Gu Yun. Ever since she had boarded the bus, she hadn't moved for 2 whole days. She didn't eat or speak, and just sat on the bed in a meditative posture. If it weren't for Gu Yun still maintaining her breathing, Gu Han would have thought that she was dead. On the first day, Gu Han didn't mind, but on the second day, it was a problem that he had to face. If she didn't eat or move, Gu Yun would be in big trouble. Therefore, after this situation lasted for 2 days, Gu Han had to forcibly carry Gu Yun out of the bed and put her on the dining table. Gu Yun still remained motionless, which was very strange. It looked like someone had hid her acupoints. Gu Yun, what's wrong with you? Don't scare me. Gu Han gently patted Gu Yun's face, but Gu Yun still didn't have any change or reaction. That's troublesome. Gu Han carefully observed Gu Yun and found that her clothes were a little strange, especially the position of her abdomen. The clothes that should have been flat were pushed up, as if there was something hidden in them. Gu Han immediately lifted Gu Yun's clothes. He wanted to see what Gu Yun was hiding under her clothes. What are you doing? Pervert! How dare you do this to your sister in broad daylight? At this time, Song Yifei walked out of her room and happened to see Gu Han lifting Gu Yun's clothes. Then, he stared at the obscene scene inside Gu Yun's clothes. Song Yifei immediately rushed up and slapped Gu Han's face. What a pervert! He didn't even let go of his sister. However, Song Yifei didn't slap Gu Han's face. Gu Han tilted his head and dodged it. Then, he grabbed Song Yifei's hand and forcefully threw it back. Then, he covered Gu Yun's clothes again. You pervert! Sex maniac! Sister complex! Song Yifei's wrist was hurt by Gu Han. She held her wrist and said disdainfully. Shut up, it's not what you think. Gu Han snorted. Gu Yun hasn't eaten or slept for 2 days and 2 nights. She's in a very strange state now. I'm just checking her body to see if there's anything strange. What are you thinking about? I see. Song Yifei blushed. Indeed, Gu Yun had been in this strange state for a long time. This was an inconceivable thing for a 5 or 6-year-old child who was alive and kicking. Children of this age were all naughty children. They were naughty children who couldn't wait to turn the whole house upside down. It was indeed extremely strange for them to not move for 2 days and 2 nights. What's going on? Did you find anything wrong with her? Song Yifei asked nervously. No, there's nothing wrong with Gu Yun's body. Gohan shook his head. Move aside, I'm going to use the medical pod to check Gu Yun. Let's see if the medical pod can find anything wrong with Gu Yun. In the end, the medical pod couldn't find anything wrong with Gu Yun. This special medical pod, which was specially made for sword immortals, scanned Gu Yun's body. The result was that the patient was fine. She was just hungry. Helpless, Gohan could only carry Gu Yun out and put her back on the dining table. What should we do now? Song Yifei felt Gu Yun's pulse. It was very normal. She indeed looked very healthy. She was just a little hungry. Why don't we feed Gu Yun something first? Otherwise she'll starve. Okay. Gohan nodded in agreement. This was indeed the right decision. Before figuring out what happened to Gu Yun, it was more important to solve Gu Yun's hunger problem. But where can we find glucose solution? Gu Yun can't chew now. She can't eat at all. Song Yifei searched around the floating bus, trying to find glucose solution for Gu Yun to drink. However, in a situation where all emergency medical equipment had been replaced by medical pods, not a single medical kit could be found on the bus. There were some medical supplies in Gohan's dimensional pocket, but they were all for hemostasis, pain relief, and detoxification. There was no such thing as glucose that could stop hunger. Why don't we make some rice porridge for her? Song Yifei thought for a while and suggested. Mash the cooked rice into porridge and feed it to Gu Yun. Porridge? Gohan suddenly had an idea. He remembered that he had bought some crunchy crunches in Yeyang Fortress. Gohan had eaten 1 or 2 pieces. Apart from the crispy fried skin, the inside of the crunchy crunch was a solid high-protein substance with high nutritional value. Moreover, the meat of the crunchy crunch was very tender, almost to the extent that it melted in one's mouth. As long as one put it in one's mouth, the meat inside would automatically melt in the innermost part, just like candy. It was the best food to supplement Gu Yun with nutrition. Therefore, Gohan took out an entire bag of crunchy crunches from his dimensional pocket. Gu Yun usually didn't eat much. She could only eat about half a caddy. Gohan poured out half a caddy of crunchy crunches and carefully peeled off the delicious but indigestible crispy skin on the outside. Then, he peeled off the white meat inside. Hey, this looks familiar. Song Yifei saw that Gohan was dealing with the crunchy crunches and felt a little strange. Then, she took out her personal terminal and searched for a while in the database before she came back to her senses with a tense face. At that moment, Gohan had almost finished dealing with half a caddy of crunchy crunches. Gohan, do you know what this crunchy crunch is? Song Yifei finally couldn't help but ask after a while. What is it? Isn't it a meat product? Gohan didn't notice that Song Yifei's expression was strange. It is indeed a meat product, but do you know whose meat it is? Finally, Song Yifei couldn't help but laugh out loud. Gohan was stunned. From Song Yifei's laughter, he sensed a very bad premonition. Yes, headless teethworm, also known as maggots. The larvae of flies usually feed on rotten meat and excrement. The meat is delicious and contains a variety of rare proteins that humans need. It is a very nutritious food. Song Yifei said seriously and finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. But don't worry. Look at the size of this maggot. It should be a large maggot specially used for breeding. They don't eat excrement. Ha ha ha. Is it so funny? Gohan glared at Song Yifei. But there was a new problem. Should he let Qinpin eat this thing? Chapter 366. There were only 3 people left in the previously crowded meeting room. They were Cloudy Sword Celestial Lu Lei, white colt sword celestial Ju Wudao, and the pleated sword spirit. Communication with the freeman was a confidential matter. The rest of the people were excluded, leaving only the 3 sword-bearers with sufficient status and strength. Connect them, Ju Wudao said to his personal terminal. Immediately, a projector was lowered from the ceiling of the meeting room, projecting a figure in front of the 3 people. Updraft. Seeing the figure that was projected, Ju Wudao's eyes flashed with a bright light. Just now, he had specially looked through the information of the free people and immediately linked this figure with a famous name. It was a petite figure, only about 1.6 meters tall, with a small flower on her head. Her long, straight, black hair made her look like a naive and romantic girl. It was hard to imagine that this girl was actually related to the powerful Esper among the free ones. Updraft. Good afternoon, gentlemen sword-bearers. I'm Lazy. Nice to meet you. This freeman, nicknamed Updraft, spoke with a warm tone and attitude. It was hard to associate her with a powerful freeman. Humph. Hypocrite. When the pleated sword spirit saw the rising stream of tears, she was instantly enraged. She wanted nothing more than to peel off her skin, break her bones, and devour her flesh one mouthful at a time. If it were not for Lu Lei and Ju Wudao's repeated warnings, the pleated sword spirit would have cursed her on the spot. I'm sorry. We deeply regret the deaths in your city. This is not what we wanted to happen. Updraft actually apologized. Looking at her standard 90-degree bow, it seemed that her apology was sincere. Updraft, what do you mean by this? Are you playing us like monkeys? You killed my people, and now you're apologizing to me. Do you think that your apology can save the lives of more than 100 human sword-bearers? Your hands are stained with the blood of humans. This vengeance we humans will sooner or later. Enough. Shut up. Bifold, if you dare to say another word without my permission, you'll be sent to the hospital immediately. You're not allowed to come out for 3 days. Ju Wudao directly let out an angry rebuke. His words made his wrinkled face turn blue and red. Finally, Wei Ran heaved a long sigh and sat back powerlessly. The pleated sword spirit's heart was filled with hatred, but he also knew that Wudao couldn't do anything about it. Humanity was about to enter the difficult sword era. In this era, they really couldn't afford to become enemies with the Freedom Metropolis. Otherwise, humanity's losses would be far greater than the lives of over 100 sword-bearers. It's fine. We can understand the feelings of this Mr. Sword Wielder. If we were in his shoes, if more than 100 of our companions died in the Freedom City, we would feel the same way as this Mr. We would unleash an unbearable rage. Tears said as he turned around and bowed toward the pleated sword spirit. The pleated sword spirit was expressionless. He did not move at all as he accepted the rising current's bow. Your Excellency Tears, it sounds like you don't want to be enemies with Yuzhang City and the human race, right? Lu Lei asked the most important question. The answer to this question might decide the fate of the entire human race. Of course, the Freedom Metropolis will always remain neutral. This has always been the principle of the Freedom Metropolis. It will never change. Tears replied solemnly. This answer made the 3 people in the room heave a sigh of relief. If the answer was true, then that was great. Humans wouldn't have to worry about the Freedom Metropolis joining Yuan Ko's side. If the answer was false, then it was fine. At least the Freedom Metropolis wouldn't be ready to fall out with the humans in a short period of time. This would give the humans time to make various preparations. Then, Your Excellency Tears, can you explain to us why you're here today? You've killed more than 100 human sword-bearers. How do you explain that? According to the agreement signed by us humans, Yuan Ko, and the Freedom Metropolis, a battle with more than 100 casualties can be defined as a war. Lu Lei unceremoniously threw these things in front of Tears, as if the humans didn't care about declaring war on the Freedom Metropolis. No, Mr. Swordbearer. According to the agreement, It's only a declaration of war if we kill the other party with our own hands. The one who really killed those humans was Yuan Ko of the Western Demonic Beast. It has nothing to do with us Freedom Metropolis. At most, we helped them teleport once. This hasn't reached the level of a declaration of war, Tears replied. Is that so? Zhu Wudao looked at the pleated sword spirit. The other party snorted but didn't say anything. Now I'll let you speak, Zhu Wudao said angrily. Of course, he knew the pleated sword spirit was bickering with him. It was a silent confrontation. I don't know. The pleated sword spirit finally spoke. I can only say that no Freedom Metropolis participated in the battle within my sight. As for the battle outside my sight, I don't know. This sword-bearer is too humble. Your sword lady is the thousand-eyed sword. We don't think we can hide anything under the thousand-eyed sword's gaze. Tears smiled. The pleated sword spirit felt a little awkward. Indeed, the thousand-eyed sword was famous for its vision that covered the entire situation. Very few things could escape the thousand-eyed sword's eyes. Under the thousand-eyed sword's gaze, it seemed like the Freedom Metropolis really hadn't made a move. Sir Tears, even if what you said is true and you Freedom Metropolis didn't make a move, you still helped the Western Demonic Beasts Yuan Ko teleport to the vicinity of Fort Yuyang and launch a surprise attack on the fortress. Isn't this your doing? Lu Lei questioned. That's right. We are very sorry about this. It was indeed our doing. Tears bowed slightly. The agreement didn't stipulate that we couldn't help Yuan Ko teleport. Moreover, we were forced to do so. We Freedom Metropolis had no intention of breaking the agreement. Forced to do so? You were forced to do so? Zhu Wudao keenly grasped the main point of Tears' words. If the Freedom Metropolis had been forced to do so by Yuan Ko? It's a long story. We have a very important friend who is currently under the control of the Western Demonic Beast. They asked us to help them move the demonic beasts away before they would release our friend. Therefore, we had no other choice, Tears said calmly. That's great. That's great. Lu Lei and Zhu Wudao looked at each other. There was actually joy in their eyes. They didn't expect the situation to be completely reversed from the meeting just now. The Freedom Metropolis, who originally thought they were going to start a war with the humans, was actually forced to do so by Yuan Ko's hostage. In this way, not only would the Freedom Metropolis not become enemies with the humans, but they would also be enraged by Yuan Ko's actions. In a fit of anger, it was not impossible for them to completely join the human camp. This way, the humans would have an easier time during the difficult sword era, and they would be able to pass through the entire difficult sword era in a more stable manner. As for the more than 100 sword-bearers and 3,000 civilians who had been ambushed, Lu Lei and Zhu Wudao could directly ignore them. Compared to the survival of the humans, even if the death toll was 10 times higher, the humans would still have to grit their teeth and endure it. Everyone, I'm actually not contacting you to explain these things. We don't care what you think of our Freedom Metropolis. Forgive me for being blunt, but even if our Freedom Metropolis really made a move, you won't dare to do anything to us before we clearly express our intention to join the Yuan Ko camp. Teardrop's words sounded harsh and annoying, but it was the truth. Humans would never push a potential friend to their enemy. Then why did you contact us, Sir Tears? Are you purposely mocking us? Lu Lei's expression stiffened. No, I just hope that you will send someone to Fort Yuyang, Tears said and vanished. As Lei Zi spoke, his figure disappeared, and the scene abruptly turned into a dark and gloomy scene. Only a bonfire could barely light up the entire space. It's them. Seeing this scene, the pleated blade spirit immediately jumped up from his chair. He rubbed his eyes in disbelief. In this dark space, he actually saw dozens of medical pods. There were also a few humans looking at the pleated blade spirit with a mixture of joy and sorrow. Gui Lin Lei, are you guys alright? The pleated blade spirit's eyes welled up with tears. These people were the warriors of the sword bearers under his command. They were members of the missing list. He thought they were all dead. He didn't expect to see them alive. Sir Pleated Blade. We're fine, we're all fine. We still have more than 30 brothers. They survived too. As long as they come out of the medical pods, they'll be fine again. One of the sword bearers said with tears in his eyes. It's a pity that most of our sword ladies are either broken or unable to fight anymore. Otherwise we could have fought our way out. Another sword bearer said unwillingly. What nonsense are you guys spouting? The outside world is full of Yuan Ko demonic beasts, and their numbers are still increasing. How can you guys escape? Tears mercilessly interrupted these people's fantasies. He then said to Lu Lei and the others, these 30-plus people were saved by us freemen. This is all we can do to make up for our mistakes. We'll do our best to protect them, but the Western demonic beasts have something on us. No one knows when the Western demonic beasts will discover them. Whether we send someone to save them or not, it's up to you. Oh right, I forgot to tell you guys. The Western demonic beasts are still recruiting. I even saw Loki. You guys should know better than us what this means. That's it. The demonic beasts are stupid, but Loki is very smart. It'll be too dangerous if we continue contacting him. If you want to send someone to save them, you can come to these coordinates. We'll send someone to meet you. Chapter 367. My lord, let me go. After the call ended, Hundred Folds immediately stood up and used his bloodstained hand to pat his bloodstained chest. After seeing that there were still more than 30 surviving sword-bearers, Hundred Folds could not suppress the huge excitement in his heart at all, and the wound that had just healed with great difficulty burst open again. Sit down. Why are you so excited? Do you want to die? Zhu Wudao snorted coldly and asked. You go? Are your injuries healed? Have you repaired your thousand-eye sword? Have you recovered all the sword elements in your body? Zhu Wudao's 3 consecutive questions forced the pleated sword spirit back down. Indeed, if he went to save people now, he would be courting death. I'll go, Lu Lei said faintly. This old bag of bones hasn't fought in a long time. It's a good time to get some exercise. You're not allowed to go either. Unexpectedly, Zhu Wudao rebutted Lu Lei again. The freelancer made it very clear that Loki is already there. There's no guarantee that other gods from the Western pantheon won't appear. I don't want to lose one of the only 2 immortal sword-level sword-bearers in Yuzhang City, just for the sake of 30 ancient sword and treasure sword-bearers. It's just Loki. Even if he's an Ian-level Yuan Ko, I'm confident that I can suppress him. Lu Lei frowned. His reputation as Cloudy Sky Sword Immortal wasn't just for show. He had fought for it. The number of universe-level and Ian-level Yuan Ko that had died in Lu Lei's hands had reached a total of 4. This was a very impressive achievement among all the immortal sword-level sword-bearers. What if it's not just Loki? If Thunder God Thor, War God Tyr, or even the 3 goddesses of fate come, let me ask you, can one person defeat them? Zhu Wudao questioned Lu Lei again. How is that possible? Why would they all appear in Fort Yuyang? If they really came, wouldn't that mean that they're declaring war on Yuzhang City? At this point, Lu Lei's voice paused. You're saying that they're going to declare war on us? A great invasion is coming? Although I'm not sure, from what Updraft said just now, the war is about to begin. The great invasion is coming again. The flesh on Zhu Wudao's face was squeezed together, forming many wrinkles. Otherwise, why would the Western Divine System, whose territory is tens of thousands of kilometers away from us, cross such a long distance to attack our Yuyang fortress? They even took the risk of becoming enemies with the free metropolis and forced the perverted Sunspot to help them teleport? More importantly, Tyr of Updraft said that the troops in Fort Yuyang are still increasing. If this isn't to deal with the entire Yuzhang City, then what is it for? That's not necessarily true. Maybe the freemen are lying to us. They're just putting on an act. The pleated sword spirit said, unconvinced. If they're just fooling us, it'll be even worse. I believe that the 30 sword-bearers must be surrounded by an inescapable net, waiting for us to stupidly send out reinforcements to rescue them. Zhu Wudao swung his hand, showing his determination. Sacrificing the lives of 6 people to save 1 person is something only idiotic Americans would do. I, Sword Immortal Baiju, will never do such a thing in my lifetime. The sacrifice of 6 people to save 1 person that Zhu Wudao was referring to was the movie Saving Private Ryan, from before the Great Apocalypse. This CD, which was found in the ruins, became a precious record for humans to understand the era before the Great Apocalypse. However, at that time, the longevity Jiandi had given the movie its harshest criticism. Sacrificing 6 people for 1 person is the stupidest trade in the world. If anyone dares to do such a trade in the future, he or she will be a traitor to humanity. Just because of that one sentence from the Sword Emperor Longevity, the story of this movie had become the target of collective criticism from all of humanity. Indeed, 6 sword-bearers for 1 sword-bearer. Human sword-bearers were not like soldiers on the battlefield. Soldiers only needed to issue a mobilization order to continuously mobilize millions of people, which were equivalent to consumables. However, the sword-bearers were too precious. Every death of a sword-bearer meant 1 less precious force. Not to mention 6 for 1, even 6 for 5 was impossible. The fate of Yuzhong City is in our hands this time. I must ensure that all our forces are concentrated in Yuzhong City. Only by doing so can we protect Yuzhong City. As for those sword-bearers who are waiting for our rescue, I can only apologize to them. Their heroic deeds will be engraved on stone tablets in the future. Zhu Wudao's words were very serious and ruthless. The lives of more than 30 sword-bearers were completely sacrificed because of his word. Hee, what a benevolent chairman of the Sword Committee. My brothers haven't even died yet, but you've already begun to prepare stone tablets for them. To have such a chairman of the Sword Committee, I, the Pleated Sword, am truly blessed. The Pleated Sword Spirit's words were very calm, but the suppressed anger within could not be hidden from anyone. All right, Lord Baiju, I can understand that you're doing this for Yuzhong City. Please understand me as well. Even if I'm alone, I'll save my brothers. After saying that, the Pleated Sword Spirit turned around and left the conference room to save his brothers. Brainless fool. Zhu Wudao's face darkened. A solid sword aura shot out from his body and turned into chains that instantly bound the Pleated Sword Spirit's body. The Pleated Sword Spirit lost his balance and fell to the ground, splattering blood all over the floor. Let me go. Let me go. The Pleated Sword Spirit struggled with all his might. However, he was seriously injured and the sword essence in his body had been depleted. He could not resist Zhu Wudao's imprisonment at all. Guards, bring the Pleated Sword Spirit to the hospital and give him 10 times the sedative. Before I give the order, let him lie in the medical chamber and sleep forever. Do you understand? Zhu Wudao said to his 2 subordinates who had walked in. The 2 subordinates saluted, lifted the struggling Pleated Sword Spirit, and left the conference room. Old man, are you dissatisfied with how I've dealt with him? Lu Lei had witnessed the entire process of how Zhu Wudao dealt with the Pleated Sword Spirit. There was a faint smile on his face, or perhaps it was a mocking smile, or a bitter smile, or a sad smile. No, if I were you, I would have done the same. Lu Lei shook his head. I'm just a little touched. Since when did Yuzhong City fall to the point where even its own people can't save them? If the Terminator Jiandi was still alive, Yuzhong City would have gone to save these 30 poor fellows even if they had to sacrifice everything they had. The Terminator Jiandi was the previous Jiandi born in Yuzhong City. When Lu Lei was still a 14-year-old child, the Terminator Jiandi had already ascended to immortality. Since then, there had been no Jiandi in Yuzhong City for more than 70 years. If I were Jiandi, I could take back the entire Yeyang fortress all by myself. I wouldn't give up on those children. Zhu Wudao smiled bitterly. Unfortunately, this is just an if. Yuzhang City may be facing a life-and-death situation. I can't act on impulse. I have to remain absolutely calm. Yes, it's because of your calmness that I took the initiative to give up when I was fighting for the position of the Sword Committee chairman. I knew that I would never have your calmness, Lu Lei said with a face full of memories. Those days were so nostalgic. If I could, I would rather be like you and stay in the Sword Pavilion. I don't want to be tortured by these painful things for the rest of my life. Zhu Wudao let out a long sigh. I'm going to draft an order. Come along. You decide. I have no objections, Lu Lei said. Bat, I'm going to issue the Sword Committee Chairman's order. You're responsible for recording it. Bat understands. Yuzhang City Chairman's Order Number 869 is being recorded. Please announce the order, an electronic voice said in the room. Pass down my order. The entire Yuzhang City is on red alert. Abandon all the beacon towers outside the absolute safety zone. Gather the sword bearers who leave the beacon towers to the large fortress with the quantum transmission array to monitor the surroundings of Yuzhang City. Withdraw all the people in the Miling Mountain Range. Sword bearers, ordinary people, and miners all retreat to Yuzhang City. Leave a small team to guard the quantum transmission array. Once there is any danger, this team can immediately retreat to Yuzhang City without asking for permission. All the equipment that can be taken away will be taken away, and those that can't be taken away will be left there. If it's destroyed, then so be it. We can rebuild it in the future. Oh, by the way, the same goes for the sword bearers in the fortress. Once they discover that Yuan Ko is launching a large-scale attack and the fortress can't defend, immediately retreat through the quantum transmission array without asking for permission. Work outside the absolute safety zone as usual, but everyone must maintain a smooth communication channel. You are not allowed to leave the area within 10 kilometers of your camp. Once you receive the warning of Yuan Ko's attack, immediately retreat. Immediately retreat by car back to Yuzhang City. Send out all the large heavy-duty vehicles to transport all the various resources we have stored outside the city back to Yuzhang City. The preparations for this attack are much greater than the previous two. This time, it is very likely to become a tug-of-war. We must ensure that the city has enough resources to withstand it. Immediately start a news control. News of the attack must only be known by the higher-ups. We must strictly keep it a secret from the civilians. We cannot let the city fall into chaos. Oh no, our actions are too obvious. There are many strange people among the civilians. They will not let go of this opportunity to create chaos. Still, tell them that the attack is imminent, but this is a completely controllable attack. Yuzhang City is absolutely safe. Also, send out a recall order. Immediately recall all the sword bearers who are adventuring outside. Tell them not to go in the direction of Yuyang. That place is already under Yuan Ko's control. Tell them to take a detour and return to Yuzhang City from the southeast. Send a distress signal to the other 7 cities, especially Yanjing City. Yuzhang City is finished. It's best to let them send their own immortal sword bearers over to support us. Then, contact Wu Zhang Shifang alone. Tell him that he can return the favor now. Note that the Eagle Cat Sword Spirits team does not need to return. Finally, reopen all the underground shelters. Start cleaning up the shelter's sanitation. Check the shelter's ventilation and nutrient storage. It's been 12 years. It's time to reopen the shelters again. Chapter 368. Changyang Mountain was located in Shihe County, Longnan City, Gansu Province before the Great Calamity. After the Great Calamity, Changyang Mountain was under the jurisdiction of Yuzhang City, but it didn't really matter. It was only a nominal jurisdiction. When Yanjing City had just been established and Yuzhang City was still nowhere to be seen, Yanjing City had jurisdiction over the vast territories of Huaxia, Fusang, Central Asia, Siberia, Southeast Asia, India, and Australia. but in fact, it was already difficult for Yanjing City to control the area within a few hundred kilometers around it. Those territories were only controlled in name. When Yuzhong City was established, Zhejian Jiandi went to the Sword Committee of Yanjing City to discuss the issue of territory. Chen Shuang Jiandi drew a line along the central axis of Huaxia and gave the area south of the line to Yuzhong City. He even asked Zhejian Jiandi if it was enough. If it wasn't enough, he could also give Siberia to Zhejian Jiandi. All in all, there was no dispute between the base cities regarding the nominal territory. They couldn't even control the land around their own cities, let alone territories thousands of kilometers away. After traveling along the broken highway for 4 days, Guhan's hover bus finally arrived near Chongyang Mountain. They met some Yuan Ko along the way, and they were all assigned to Guhan, Song Yifei, and Ku Rock-in as missions. In less than 10 minutes, they were all killed by Guhan and the others. They also met a team of sword-bearers who were on an adventure. They were a team of sword-bearers from Yanjing City. There were 25 people in total, and they had been on an adventure for almost half a year. After chatting with them, they learned that their goal was to destroy a stronghold of the Martyr's Palace. It was said that there was a natural sword lady left in Yuan Ko's hands in that stronghold. They wanted to take the sword lady back. However, the team had already lost 5 sword-bearers before they could find the stronghold. Therefore, the team leader already had the intention to retreat. He planned to return to Yanjing City after eliminating the Yuan Ko in the area. After that, Guhan didn't meet any sword-bearers anymore. He didn't meet any of them even when he reached his destination. Brother Tianyuan, long time no see. Seeing Su Tianyuan jump down from the tree, Guhan couldn't help but size up this son of an aristocratic family that he hadn't seen for almost 2 weeks. The other party's clothes were neat and tidy, and his face was glowing. He did not look like a guy who had been hiding in the jungle for 2 weeks. However, this was not strange. As long as Su Tianyuan did not lose his dimensional pocket, he would never lack tools to take care of himself. Brother Guhan, I didn't expect to see you here. Ling didn't choose the wrong person. Su Tianyuan cupped his fist and smiled at Guhan. Ling? Song Yifei's ears twitched. This name sounded like a girl's name. Could it be that there was something that Song Yifei did not know? Thinking about it carefully, Song Yifei really did not know about the existence of Liuyan Ling. There were a few times when he met with Guhan, but Liuyan Ling was not by Guhan's side. Although Zhu Wudao knew something about Guhan and Liuyan Ling, he would not tell Song Yifei about it. Therefore, this was the first time that Song Yifei heard the name Ling. Oh, you don't know, but Ling is Mr. Guhan's girlfriend. Ling was the one who discovered the trial field. However, Ling was trapped in the trial field, and Brother Guhan rushed here to save Ling. This is really touching. Su Tianyuan looked like he was touched. You have a girlfriend. Song Yifei suddenly raised his voice by several pitches. Guhan, you're good. You hit it well. Congratulations. Iwenjun swore that Song Yifei wasn't moved at all. That's right, I'm here to save Linlin. Guhan's answer was clever. He only said that he was there to save Liuyan Ling, but he did not answer the crucial question of whether Liuyan Ling was his girlfriend. Alright, you ungrateful little guy. Now is not the time for you to be jealous. The eagle cat sword spirit couldn't stand it anymore. The sword wielder who couldn't stand being abused directly defined Song Yifei as someone who was jealous. Instantly, Song Yifei shut his mouth. He didn't want to talk about Linlin anymore. What a joke, who was jealous? Su Tianyuan, right? The descendant of the Confucian family. The spirit of the eagle cat nodded. Let me ask you, how is the situation? Have the people from the other base cities arrived? The team from Yanjing has arrived. They are resting in the temporary camp. As for the other base cities, there is no news yet, Su Tianyuan answered politely. He is the descendant of the Confucian family. Iwenjun, who was standing behind Guhan, carefully sized up Su Tianyuan and couldn't help but feel a sense of shame in her heart. Yi Wenjun was also a descendant of the Jiandi family. He was also the descendant of the invincible Zhe Jiandi, who had established the Yuzhong base city. Strictly speaking, Yi Wenjun's bloodline was nobler than Su Tianyuan's. At the very least, Confucian Jiandi would never be able to defeat Zhe Jiandi. Besides, Confucian Jiandi did not leave behind a base city that could bring fortune to the world. While Yi Wenjun was thinking about these things, Su Tianyuan and the spirit of the eagle cat had finished their conversation. Su Tianyuan turned around, saluted the others in a graceful manner, and then introduced himself with a smile. I am Su Tianyuan, the descendant of the Confucian family. It is my pleasure to meet the geniuses and young heroes of Yuzhong City. I wonder if I would be honored to make friends with you all. As expected of a descendant of the Confucian family, every word and action was well-mannered. Ku Rak-in. Nice to meet you. Ku Rak-in was the first to speak. After introducing himself, this Chunibu teenager turned his nose up in the air and ignored Su Tianyuan, as if Su Tianyuan was some insignificant nobody. Oh, it is the son of Sword Immortal Baiju. My apologies. Su Tianyuan said politely and ignored Ku Rak-in. Although the son of a sword immortal sounded impressive, it was nothing compared to his status as the descendant of the Confucian family. Once Sword Immortal Baiju passed away, Ku Rak-in would be nothing to him. Then, Su Tianyuan looked at Guhan. Guhan smiled and didn't say anything. He and Su Tianyuan already knew each other, so there was nothing for him to introduce. Then, Song Yifei took the initiative to speak. She imitated Su Tianyuan and cupped her fists. Song Yifei, I used to be a doctor. Recently, I got lucky and became a sword wielder. I'm ashamed that I don't have much to show. So it's Miss Yifei. Miss Yifei, don't belittle yourself. I can sense an unusual power from Miss Yifei. Miss Yifei will definitely be able to gain something in the trial field. After Song Yifei finished her self-introduction, only Yi Wenjun was left. Yi Wenjun took a deep breath and made a gesture that looked a bit strange, but naturally gave off a noble and elegant aura of a complex etiquette. I am Yuzhong City's Shrouding Heaven family's 16th generation descendant, Yi Wenjun. May I ask how the descendant of the Confucian family is doing? It seemed like Yi Wenjun had brought out the etiquette of the Jiandi family. In a certain era, some of the family heads of the Jiandi family felt good about themselves. In order to highlight their status as part of the Jiandi family, they came up with a set of etiquette for the Jiandi family to interact with each other. Then, this set of etiquette quickly spread among all the Jiandi families. Back then, the Shrouding Heaven family was the most proactive one. After losing their strength, they could only rely on these complicated etiquettes to show their status as part of the Jiandi family. However, it was worth mentioning that the Lunyan family had never cared about these etiquette. Their descendants had always done whatever they wanted, and they deeply hated etiquette. It was said that one family head privately said that only those rotten families would care about these meaningless etiquettes. Because of their deep relationship with the Lunyan family, the Confucian family had also been influenced by the Lunyan family. They also didn't care about this etiquette. Although Su Tianyuan knew about these etiquettes and had learned some of them, he had basically forgotten most of them. If you asked him to use the standard etiquette to reply to Yi Wenjun's etiquette, then sorry, Su Tianyuan couldn't do it. Su Tianyuan took the initiative to grab Yi Wenjun's hand and excitedly said, I didn't expect to meet the descendant of the Shrouding Heaven family here. This is truly surprising. The Shrouding Heaven family hasn't interacted with other families in over 200 years. I didn't expect to meet you today. It's truly my honor. Very good. This way, I won't have to be embarrassed about not knowing etiquette. Su Tianyuan did it because he was excited. But then again, the Shrouding Heaven family really hadn't appeared in the various family gatherings and conferences for a long time. The reason was very simple. They couldn't afford to lose face. Back then, The heaven-shrouding family's laughable fight for the position of family leader had caused quite a commotion, and all of the Sword Emperor families knew about it. As such, the heaven-shrouding family became the laughingstock of the circle, and the elders of the family used it to educate the younger generation. There was a saying that went, "Families can't cover the sky too much." Don't misunderstand, this wasn't to criticize the families for being overbearing. It was to educate their descendants that they couldn't live like the Shrouding Heaven family. Adding on the fact that the Shrouding Heaven family didn't have a single famed sword bearer, they didn't have the face to attend any conferences. A few generations of family heads were thick-skinned and wanted to attend the conference to get some benefit. In the end, they were stopped by Yuzhong City. What a joke. If other families went to lose face, then so be it. If the founder of Yuzhong City, the descendant of the Shrouding Heaven Jiandi family, lost face, then the entire Yuzhong City would lose face. Therefore, it was true that the various families hadn't seen the descendant of the Shrouding Heaven family for over 200 years. If Yi Wenjun hadn't mentioned it, Su Tianyuan would have almost forgotten about the existence of the Shrouding Heaven family. Chapter 369. Why am I so unlucky? Xiaoya, who was lying on Wenmeiyun's bed, kept complaining. It wasn't easy for her to convince Guogua to help her fake a fall from a building and break her legs. She finally succeeded in living in Gohan's house, but she didn't expect that on the morning she moved in, Gohan would bring all the family members except for her mother out for a mission. This made Long Xiaoya, who was filled with joy and wanted to become a beautiful canary, extremely depressed and regretful. If she had known that this would happen, she wouldn't have gone to create the accident. In order to deceive Wenmeiyun and Gohan, she really jumped from the 3rd floor, but she wrapped a thick layer of sponge on her head to prevent it from breaking. The pain brought by the fracture was also worth it. Heaven had pity on her. She, Xiaoya, had put in a lot of effort for this plan. In the end, she was happy for nothing and broke both her legs. There was nothing more tragic than this in the world. Thinking of this, Long Xiaoya couldn't help but cry silently. What was this? Why did all kinds of bad things happen to me? Forget it, I'll just watch the television. Since the main benefits were gone, the remaining secondary benefits couldn't be lost. This house was really not bad. After sleeping in Guogua's house for a month and smelling the stench for a month, it wasn't easy to live in such a good environment. No matter what, she had to enjoy it to the fullest. Especially the television. At Guogua's place, she could only watch the television through her personal terminal. This wasn't a comfortable thing, especially when the soundproofing of the hundreds of capsules were all watching the television through the personal terminal. The sound of hundreds of channels converging together was enough to make anyone lose interest in watching the television. Therefore, to be able to watch her favorite television in a spacious, quiet, and comfortable room was the only thing that could make Xiaoya, who had broken both her legs, feel happy. However, it seemed that some people didn't want Xiaoya to be happy. Xiaoya, who was engrossed in watching the latest popular TV series, Sword Immortal Falls in Love with Me, suddenly noticed that the TV screen shook, and then it entered a state of static. In the upper right corner of the screen, there was a prompt indicating that some signal was switching. Seriously, 1,000 years had passed. Why was there still nothing but static when there was no signal on the television? It seemed that this was the suggestion of the Historical Research Committee, indicating that they wanted to restore history. The snowflakes were full of beauty, and it was easier for people to be intoxicated. It felt very powerful. Damn it. I haven't even seen how Green Tea hooked up with Lord Celestial Sword and Fairy. Why is she gone? Xiaoya muttered in dissatisfaction. She had wanted to learn the female lead's flirting skills, but now she couldn't. By the way, there was a rumor on the internet that the script of this phenomenal TV series with a viewership rating of 7% was originally called His Majesty Jiandi Falls in Love with Me. Unfortunately, it was rejected by the SARFT. The reason was very righteous. After the apocalypse, Jiandi is not allowed to fall in love with someone other than his first wife. But soon, the screen returned to normal, but the original TV drama turned into a studio. A dignified and beautiful famous female host faced the camera solemnly with a serious expression. F*CK, who wants to watch the news? I want to change the channel. A young girl like Xiaoya naturally had no interest in news programs. She decisively used the remote control to change the channel, only to find that the other channel was broadcasting the same news. Xiaoya couldn't believe it. She quickly changed the channel, only to find that the television seemed to be dominated by this news. No matter which channel it was broadcasting the female host's image. I'm not watching anymore. That's good enough, right? Xiaoya was about to turn off the television, cover her head in anger, and sleep. But the next moment, her hand that was holding the remote control loosened. Latest news. The identity of the shameful Yuan Ko who launched the sneak attack on our Fort Yeyang has been confirmed. He is Yuan Ko from the Western Beast Camp. These despicable Yuan Ko didn't have the courage to attack our great, brave, and fearless swordsman from the front. He only dared to launch a sneak attack on us from behind. Caught off guard, although the brave swordsmen tried their best to resist, they were unable to defend against the despicable sneak attack. As a result, the Fort Yeyang fell. Fortunately, most of our sword-bearers have returned safely. More than 100 sword-bearers have left their lives on that hot-blooded land forever, composing an impassioned heroic hymn. Today, the Council and the Sword Committee jointly made an announcement to inform our dear audience, civilians, and citizens. After the swordsmen risked their lives to investigate, they discovered that the number of Yuan Ko in the Fort Yeyang is increasing. It is very likely that they will launch a despicable attack on Yuzhong City. Everyone, don't get too excited. The chairman of the Sword Committee, Sword Immortal Jiu Wudao, told the reporters that according to the information, the scale of this attack is expected to be smaller than the previous ones. Regardless of whether it is the number of Yuan Ko or the level of Yuan Ko, they have always ranked at the bottom of the list. Under the leadership of Sword Immortal Jiu Wudao, the Sword Committee, and the Council, Yuzhong City has the confidence, strength, and willpower to block this attack outside the dimensional barrier. Yuzhong City's defenses will not be breached. Everyone can rest assured and stay at home, waiting for news of victory. During this time, if someone tries to create trouble, deceive the public, and cause chaos. Furthermore, if they take the opportunity to rob, rape, smash, loot, and burn, they will be seeking their own death. The Council has already issued several opinions on cracking down on violent crimes this morning, which clearly states that once violent crimes such as vandalism, robbery, and arson are found, the police have the right to immediately open fire and kill the criminal. Please do not take chances. Also, as a precaution, all the shelters have been opened and tidied up. If there is an accident, please use the emergency slides to enter the shelters in an orderly manner. Now we will broadcast the list of the dead or missing sword-bearers and commoners in the Yeyang Fortress. If you have family or loved ones in the Yeyang Fortress, you can check the list for the latest news. You can also log on to our website to make inquiries. Mom, come take a look, something big has happened. Xiaoya called out loudly. Soon, when Meiyun, who was wearing an apron, came into the room, she asked anxiously, What's wrong, Xiaoya? What happened? Did you hit your foot on something just now? What a pitiful parent. When Meiyun's thoughts were all on Xiaoya's legs. No, my legs are fine. It's news, it's news. Xiaoya immediately told Wen Meiyun everything that had just been reported on the news. Wen Meiyun's beautiful face paled in fright. These two really hadn't gone out for a whole day. Whenever they went out, they would hear everyone discussing the news of Fort Yuyang's fall. What should we do, Xiaoya? The big attack is coming again. Xiaoya, Mom will definitely protect you. When Meiyun said incoherently, Mom, what are you worried about? We are in the core area. Even if the big attack comes, it will be the people in the common areas who are unlucky. What does it have to do with our core area? Our core area is protected by 2 layers of dimensional barriers. In history, the core area has only been breached once. We are 95% safe. What are you afraid of? That's right, Mom and Xiao Ya are already in the core area. When Meiyun cried tears of joy. That's great, Xiao Ya, we are in the core area. Mom, don't cry. Although we are in the core area now, things are still uncertain. You told me before that Sir Gahan was going to Gansu province. Our teacher said that if he wanted to go to the west, he would definitely pass by the Yayang fortress. It seems like Mr. Gahan left 3 days ago. Maybe he was in the Yuyang fort yesterday. Quickly check if Mr. Gahan is in the list of casualties. Master Gahan might be inside Fort Yuyang? When Meiyun's smile didn't last for more than a few seconds before she started to cry again. Why is it like this? Lord Gahan was such a good person, he treated her so well. How could he be in the Yuyang stronghold? If he leaves, what are we going to do? That's why I said, Mother, quickly check if Lord Gahan's name is on that list. Go to the council's official website. There's a list there. Computer. But Xiaoya, Mommy doesn't know how to use a computer. Well, when Meiyun was also a rare animal in the world. In this era where every family had a computer and everyone had been surfing the internet since young, when Meiyun was a rare animal in the world. In this era, there was actually someone like Wen Meiyun who didn't know how to surf the internet even though she was in her 30s. It's okay, Xiaoya knows how to surf the internet. Mommy, carry Xiaoya to Lord Gahan's computer. Xiaoya will go to the website and check, Xiaoya said anxiously. Go to Lord Gahan's computer? When Meiyun hesitated. But Lord Gahan said that he doesn't allow us to touch his computer. Mom, what time is it? We are worried about Lord Gahan. Even if Lord Gahan finds out, he won't be angry with us. Mommy, quickly carry me there. Under Xiaoya's constant persuasion, when Meiyun, who was worried about Gahan's safety, couldn't convince Xiaoya in the end. She brought Xiaoya to Gahan's room and turned on Gahan's computer to access the council's official website. Xiaoya quickly downloaded the name list from the computer. Then, when Meiyun looked through the names one by one, after confirming that Gahan's name wasn't on the list of missing or dead swordsmen, she heaved a sigh of relief. That's great, Mommy, Lord Gahan is fine. Xiaoya stuck close to her mom's ear and said while biting her mom's ear, Mom, watching TV is so boring. Can you let Xiaoya go online for a while? Xiaoya won't do anything else. I'll just go on my QQ and chat with my classmates for a while. You don't know, when Xiaoya's classmates heard that Xiaoya was injured, they were all very concerned about her and left many messages on QQ. If Xiaoya didn't reply to them, how bad would that be? How could Xiaoya go to school with them in the future and get along with them? Not getting along well with her classmates. When Meiyun couldn't reject this reason at all. A mother definitely wouldn't want her daughter to be isolated in school. She could only nod and promise Xiaoya that she could only surf the internet for half an hour at most. Don't worry, Mommy. I don't need half an hour. 20 minutes will be enough. Seeing when Meiyun leave Gahan's room, Xiaoya smiled as if her scheme had succeeded. She didn't know what she was planning in her heart. Chapter 370. In a small temporary camp, Gahan and the others met the people of Yanjing City who had arrived earlier. There were a lot of sword-bearers from Yanjing City, about a dozen of them. Most of them were good-looking, arrogant, and modest on the surface, but actually disdainful. When they saw that Yuzhang City had only sent 4 little cats and puppies, they couldn't help but begin to despise them. They muttered in their hearts, sure enough, Yuzhang City has declined and can't produce any talents. The future of mankind still depends on us, Yanjing City, and so on. You can't blame these sword-bearers for thinking like this, because since ancient times, except for a few periods, the strongest fighting force of mankind has always come from Yanjing City. For example, now, Haotian Jiandi of Yanjing City was the cornerstone of suppressing the entire human world. Without Haotian Jiandi, only Longshu Jiandi was left, and the days of mankind would instantly become precarious. Eagle Cat, long time no see. After so many years, your appearance still hasn't changed. From the camp came a middle-aged man with a majestic gait. Although this man was nearly middle-aged, his skin was still tight and smooth, like that of a young man. In other words, he looked like a young man in his 20s. However, he had an extraordinary aura about him, one that looked down on the world with disdain. To be able to have such an aura, he had to be at least a spirit sword level sword wielder like the Eagle Cat sword spirit. And among all the spirit sword bearers in this generation, none of them was younger than 30 years old. Mystery me, it's actually you. When Eagle Cat saw the man clearly, he was shocked. He didn't expect that the leader of Yanjing City was actually Mystery Me Sword Spirit. I don't know if everyone still remembers Mystery Me Sword Spirit, the one who made the Dean of Yuzhong University, Tiger Roar Sword Spirit, admit defeat, and made the outstanding Dragon Spring Sword Spirit feel ashamed of his inferiority. He is known as the #1 Sword Master, Mystery Me Sword Spirit. He is Mystery Me Sword Spirit? The most powerful Sword Master, Mystery Me Sword Spirit. Gohan was also taken aback. For a long time, if Gohan was most concerned about the Spirit Sword level sword holder, then it must be the Confusion Sword Spirit. As a fellow Sword Master, the Chaos Sword Spirit had defeated almost all the Sword Masters who had been issued a Sword Master certificate by the Sword Master Association. Even the 3 immortal Sword Masters were no match for the Chaos Sword Spirit in a competition of pure sword technique. Therefore, the Chaos Sword Spirit was undoubtedly the strongest among the Sword Masters. At the same time, Huomi was also the strongest among all the Spirit Sword tier sword bearers, and was known as the strongest candidate for the next Sword Immortal. Gohan had always wanted to compete with the Confusion Sword Spirit in swordsmanship. He wanted to see where the limits of his swordsmanship were and whether he could compete with the #1 swordsman in the world. However, given Gohan's status back then, it was impossible for him to even glance at the sword spirit from afar, let alone compete with it. Originally, Gohan thought that he would only have the opportunity to see the Confusion Sword Spirit in the 8 Academy Assembly. Unexpectedly, he met the Confusion Sword Spirit in advance in this Chongyang Mountain. In addition to Gohan, the most excited one was Ku Rock-in. In other words, Ku Rock-in should be more excited than Gohan. Ku Rock-in had been holding the hilt of the sword in his hand, and his eyes were full of hunger. Well, it was indeed the feeling of hunger. In addition, Song Yifei and Yi Wenjun did not seem so excited. They were not sword masters, and they were not interested in the title of the #1 Sword Master of the Confusion Sword Spirit. At most, they were a little excited about the title of the #1 Spirit Sword level sword holder. Mystery Me, why are you here? Although the matter of Chongyang Mountain is very important, there is no need for Yanjing City to send you here, right? The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit said confusedly. It could be seen that the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit respected the Confusion Sword Spirit very much, which was due to the absolute strength of the Confusion Sword Spirit. No, Eagle Cat, you are wrong. Since when can Yanjing City command me? The Confusion Sword Spirit smiled slightly. This is what I want to come here. The fame of the heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor has left Huomi in awe. To be able to see the ruins of the heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor, no matter how small the matter is, Huomi will definitely not miss it. All the Spirit Sword level sword holders knew that the Confusion Sword Spirit was a fan of Zhetian Jiandi and admired Zhetian Jiandi very much. Once, she almost changed swordsmanship and became a sword holder belonging to Yuzhong City. However, because of the strong opposition of the Confusion Sword Spirit's family and Yanjing City, this idea was never achieved. It was said that the Confusion Sword Spirit had collected thousands of items used by Zhetian Jiandi, traces left behind, manuscripts, and so on. There were also all kinds of books, information, videos, biographies, and so on. In short, the Confusion Sword Spirit could be said to be the strongest die-hard fan of Zetianjiendi. It was said that the reason why he was determined to become the Sword Master was because he was influenced by Zetianjiendi's identity. Then, his talent exploded, and he became the strongest Sword Master. You still haven't changed. You still admire Zetianjiendi so much. To be honest, I don't think your swordsmanship is inferior to Zetianjiendi. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit said sincerely. He had once fought side by side with the Confusion Sword Spirit and had seen the Confusion Sword Spirit fight with his own eyes. He also admired the Confusion Sword Spirit's outstanding swordsmanship. He really felt that there was no one in this world who had better swordsmanship than the Confusion Sword Spirit. Eagle Cat, you're wrong. Compared to Zetianjiendi, my swordsmanship is like comparing the stars to the moon. It's not even worth mentioning. The Confusion Sword Spirit shook his head. His eyes were filled with admiration for Zetianjiendi. Iwenjun, who stood beside Iwenjun, was very touched. The heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor was Iwenjun's ancestor. Iwenjun's favorable impression of the mystic sword spirit instantly increased by several dozen points when she heard the extremely powerful mystic sword spirit worship its ancestor. Zetianjiendi was something that happened 700 years ago. Who knows what happened 700 years ago? The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit still maintained his opinion. He didn't think that the Confusion Sword Spirit's swordsmanship was inferior to Zetianjiendi. You're wrong, Eagle Cat. Let's not talk about Zetianjiendi from 700 years ago. Even now, he still has swordsmanship that I, the Confusion Sword Spirit, can't defeat. The Confusion Sword Spirit smiled bitterly. Then, he revealed a shocking piece of news. The Confusion Sword Spirit had been defeated, and defeated by pure swordsmanship. You lost. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit asked in disbelief. I lost, the Bumi Sword Spirit replied with a nod. He added, in pure swordsmanship we both fought with wooden swords. I lost completely. I accept my defeat. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit was silent for a long time. Was it a human or Yuan Ko who defeated you? What was his name? It was Yuan Ko. The Confusion Sword Spirit's flesh trembled. That day I went to the ancient battlefield in the Alps. I met a green-robed Yuan Ko. He was dressed in ancient clothes, and had a sage-like demeanor. He must be Yuan Ko from the Eastern Celestial Court. Later on, when I sparred with him in swordsmanship, I didn't even last more than 100 moves before I lost. In terms of swordsmanship alone, I'm afraid that even 5 of me added together wouldn't be able to match up to him. To be able to defeat you within 100 moves, Confusion Sword Spirit, you must be joking. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit was completely dumbfounded. If the Confusion Sword Spirit couldn't last 100 moves, then wouldn't he be finished in 10 moves? You know, Eagle Cat, I never joke. The Confusion Sword Spirit said seriously. But the strange thing is, I looked up all the information on Yuan Ko, but I couldn't find any information on this Yuan Ko. I suspect that he might be the Yuan Ko who came to this world through the dimensional rift recently. His strength is at least at the universe-class Yuan Ko. He might even be a universe-class Yuan Ko. Humans are in an even more dangerous situation. What's this Yuan Ko's name? Let me see if there's any information on this person in our Yuzhong City's database. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit said immediately. The addition of a universe-class Yuan Ko to Yuan Ko's camp was a major matter that had to be reported to the Sword Council. After he defeated me, he disappeared and didn't leave his name. However, I found this on the ground. The Confusion Sword Spirit took out a palm-sized green flower from the dimensional space. What is this? It looks like a lotus flower, but is there a green one in a lotus flower? The eagle cat sword spirit bent down and carefully observed the green lotus flower in the confusion sword spirit's hand. Unbeknownst to it, Gohan had become very excited. A green lotus flower. Wasn't it the green lotus in short? Upon seeing this green lotus, Gohan naturally thought of his father and the green lotus sword immortal that I Ching had mentioned. A green lotus flower, an expert swordsman, an outstanding swordsman, and a yuan yen that could never die. All of these factors combined together indicated that the yuan yen that left behind this green lotus flower was very likely the green lotus sword immortal that Gohan was looking for. Gohan didn't care about the difference in status between him and the confusion sword spirit. He wanted to directly ask where he met the owner of this green lotus flower. However, before Gohan could speak, Yi Wenjun spoke first. I know. I remember now. Lord Humi, it's very likely that the person you met was the green lotus sword fairy mentioned by our ancestor. Yi Wenjun said excitedly. Finally, there was a topic that he could interrupt. If he could help the confusion sword spirit, then the revival of the Yi family would be even easier. Your ancestor has seen this Yuan Ko? As expected, the confusion sword spirit was completely captivated by Yi Wenjun's words. Gohan also wisely kept his mouth shut. He didn't expect Yi Wenjun to know about the green lotus sword immortal. Our ancestor and her retainer once said that in this world, when it comes to swordsmanship, there are 3.5 people that she can't beat. Yi Wenjun spoke with great familiarity. The retainer he mentioned was Uncle Huang's ancestor, and this conversation was naturally between Zhetian Jiendi and Uncle Huang. That was why such important information wasn't left in the Yi family's archives. Instead, it was passed down by the Huang family's descendant. In the end, Uncle Huang told it to Yi Wenjun as a bedtime story. Among these 3.5 people, the other half is the Green Lotus Sword Immortal. The ancestor said that the Green Lotus Sword Immortal's sword art is a sword art that only the immortals of poetry can comprehend and use. The poems of poets have no limits, and the Green Lotus Sword Immortal's sword art also has no limits. Even the Milky Way of the 9 heavens can be split apart by his sword. Chapter 371. Splitting the Milky Way in one sword. Even a master like the mystic sword spirit couldn't help but click his tongue when he heard Yi Wenjun's words. This little guy's ancestor was so powerful, he could actually split the Milky Way in two. Oh no, it was the Green Lotus Sword Immortal who could split the Milky Way in one sword. Kid, who is your ancestor? You talk big, and only 3.5 people in the world are better at swordsmanship than him. Does your ancestor think he's the heaven-covering Jiendi? Behind the mystic sword spirit, a disciple from an aristocratic family mocked. Although his mouth was foul, his eyes were very sharp. He could tell at a glance that Yi Wenjun didn't have any strength. His steps were light, his head was heavy, and his feet were light. Even the sword maiden was the most common man-made sword maiden. How could such a guy come to the trial left behind by the heaven-covering Jiendi? It was really infuriating to compare oneself to others. He had to kill a large group of aristocratic family disciples to get this spot in Yanjing City. When this aristocratic family disciple saw that Yi Wenjun had gotten a spot with such trash strength, he was naturally very unhappy. He didn't hold back and directly began to mock Yi Wenjun. Speaking of which, Yuzhang City was indeed very weak. Apart from Yi Wenjun, there was no one else from the aristocratic families in Yuzhang City. Although there were far fewer aristocratic families in Yuzhang City than in Yanjing City, there were still 6 great Jiendi aristocratic families. It was very interesting that the other 5 aristocratic families didn't join Yuzhang City's team. Was it because the other 5 aristocratic families in Yuzhang City didn't have any suitable sword-bearers? Or were the descendants of these aristocratic families stupid? Or was it because Lu Lei and Zhu Wudao didn't allow these aristocratic families to join the team? No matter which reason it was a very bad thing for Yuzhang City. Hearing the other party's mockery, Wenjun's face turned green and then red. The person who mocked him thought that he had poked Wenjun's sore spot, which was why his expression changed. He felt a lot better. Unbeknownst to him, Wenjun was only considering whether or not he should reveal his identity. If he did, would this aristocratic family become angry and hate the heaven-covering family? Fortunately, someone immediately appeared to solve this problem for Wenjun. Su Tianyuan waddled over to the scion's side and clapped him on the shoulder. "Brother Yuanfang, you're really smart. How did you figure out that this young master, Wenjun, is a descendant of Zhetianjiendi? I'm impressed, truly impressed." You're still guessing? I don't even need to think to know. Wait, Su Tianyuan, what did you say? Only then did the Yuanfang brothers react. They turned their heads around in a daze, looked at Su Tianyuan and asked, "Tell me, what is this person's name? Whose descendant is he?" "His name is Wenjun. Of course he's a descendant of Zhetianjiendi I Ching. Didn't you just guess? Or with my toes?" It seemed that the relationship between Su Tianyuan and this Yuanfang must be very bad. Otherwise, he wouldn't ridicule this poor child like that. He's a descendant of Shroud Heaven Jiendi? This Yuanfang was completely dumbfounded. Was there anyone in this world who was more embarrassed than he was right now? Ridiculing someone's ancestor was only Zhetianjiendi. In the end, this person's ancestor really was Zhetianjiendi. What the hell was going on? This Yuanfang instantly felt his face burning. He felt dizzy, as if everyone around him was laughing at him. He wanted to escape from this embarrassing place, but if he really escaped, he wouldn't be able to raise his head in the circle ever again. In that moment, this Yuanfang was like an ant on a hot pan. He didn't know if he should leave or not. It was worse than killing him. Zhetianjiendi's descendant is here. One of the scions said in a low voice. Yeah, this person is actually a descendant of Zhetianjiendi. Another scion chimed in. Strange. Shouldn't Zhetianjiendi's descendant be in our circle? How come I've never seen him in our QQ group? Aristocratic families were really keeping up with the times. They actually had QQ groups. His strength looks so weak. Is he hiding his strength? A disciple from an aristocratic family who was concerned about his strength asked. Maybe. I heard that Zhetianjiendi is an expert at pretending to be a pig to eat tigers. Maybe they have some kind of skill for pretending to be a pig to eat tigers. In a short time, Wenjun had exploded in the circle of aristocratic families in Yanjing City. The heaven-shrouding imperial sword was too strong, and the heaven-shrouding aristocratic family hadn't appeared in the circle of aristocratic families for a long time. Although the heaven-shrouding aristocratic family had become a laughingstock in the past, they had been dormant in Yuzhang City for more than 200 years. Now that they had suddenly appeared, they must be preparing to shock everyone. These discussions weren't hidden from Wenjun. Instead, they were openly discussing, which made Wenjun feel very awkward. The heaven-shrouding aristocratic family wasn't dormant at all. They were conserving their strength and preparing to shock everyone. The heaven-shrouding aristocratic family was just too terrible. They were so terrible that they didn't dare to appear in front of other aristocratic families. All of you, shut up! The mystic sword spirit roared. Immediately, all the scions who were discussing shut their mouth. The confusion sword spirit was almost the default sword bearer of the immortal sword tier. He was famous among all the aristocratic families, and no one dared to disobey his words. Zhetianjiendi's descendant, tell me, who are the other three people? The mystic sword spirit asked excitedly. He was a fan of Zhetianjiendi. He admired Zhetianjiendi very much. Naturally, he was also very curious about the three people Zhetianjiendi mentioned were stronger than him. He wanted to know who it was that could make even Zhetianjiendi sigh in admiration. Oh! Wenjun was a little flustered, but he quickly composed himself and replied, The first one is His Majesty the Sword Ancestor. The elder ancestor said that the Sword Ancestor's swordsmanship is unparalleled and peerless. He is the only one in the world. In terms of swordsmanship alone, the two of them together may be able to rival the Sword Ancestor. Yes, His Majesty Kinzu turned the tide. He established our sword-wielder's eternal legacy. He fought 8 desolate class Yuan Ko and didn't lose. Zhetian Jiandi really can't compare to His Majesty Kinzu. The Chaos Sword Spirit nodded. Perhaps the Chaos Sword Spirit would not be convinced if it was someone else, but it was a matter of course for the Sword Ancestor. In this world, there was no one who was more powerful than the Sword Ancestor. The others who were listening to Iwenjun, including the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit and Ku Rakin, nodded involuntarily. Kinzu being number 1 was the consensus of everyone. It was politically correct, and there was nothing to refute. What about the second person? The Mystic Sword Spirit asked impatiently. The second person is the freelancer, the Sword Demon, Dugu Seeking Bylaws. When the Elder Ancestor was at the Immortal Sword tier, he once met Dugu Seeking Bylaws. Both of them sparred with the sword for 3 days and 3 nights. After that, the ancestors said that Dugu Chiobai was not as good as him when using a soft sword. But when it came to other heavy swords and hard swords, he was not as good as Dugu Chiobai. But in a real battle, both sides could not use soft swords, so the ancestors lost to Dugu Chiobai. It's him. The crowd was in an uproar again. Dugu Chiobai was a very unique Yuan Ko. Some said that he was the father of Dugu Chiotian, who died in the hands of humans and Jiandi. In short, this person was the same as Dugu Chiotian, a unique Yuan Ko who did not participate in any killing of humans. But he also refused to join the free cities, so it was hard to define whether he was a freelancer or a Yuan Ko. Dugu Seeker of Defeat had not appeared for hundreds of years. During the period when Dugu Seeker of Defeat often appeared, very few people could really fight against him. It was said that he only fought against those who could possibly defeat him. Just like his name, Dugu Seeker of Defeat, only seeking one defeat. When Dugu Seeking a Loss was active, he had fought with many sword masters. Without exception, all of them were defeated by Dugu Seeking a Loss. There was no doubt that his swordsmanship was superb. Who would have thought that even the heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor would be defeated by Dugu Chiobai? What about the other person? Who is the other person? Although the confused Sword Spirit was still skeptical about Dugu Chiobai's ability to defeat Zhetian Jiandi, in general, the confused Sword Spirit believed it. Because it was the president of the Sword Master Association, it knew all kinds of information left by sword masters in the past 1,000 years. Most of the information was devoted to describing Dugu Seeker of Bai's prowess, as well as the admiration of those sword masters who had been defeated by Dugu Seeker of Bai's sword. Many of them even wanted to become Dugu Seeker of Bai's disciple, but Dugu Seeker of Bai didn't care about any of them, and left after defeating them. From the memories of Dugu Chiobai, the confused sword spirit could feel Dugu Chiobai's unimaginable strength. In fact, Kinzu and Dugu Chiobai being able to defeat Zhetian Jiandi was also within the confused sword spirit's expectations. Iwenjun was just confirming it for him. But no matter how hard it tried, the confused sword spirit could not figure out who these 3 people were. Perhaps after Zhetian Jiandi, there were 1 or 2 sword masters who could theoretically defeat Zhetian Jiandi. But before Zhetian Jiandi, the confused sword spirit was sure that there was no third person who could defeat Zhetian Jiandi. The confused sword spirit could not figure out who these 3 people were. Therefore, the confused sword spirit became agitated and impatient. It held Iwenjun's hand tightly and asked. Its strength was so strong that it almost broke Iwenjun's wrist. Its master! Its master! Iwenjun was in pain and quickly said, "It's the old ancestor's master." The old ancestor said that all his sword skills were taught by his master, and he only received 10% of his master's true skills. Therefore, his master is the strongest sword master in the world. Master? The confused sword spirit was stunned when it heard this answer. Jetian Jiandi's master. This was a goddamn answer. The disciple's skills were not as good as the master, so it was only natural that Jetian Jiandi's sword skills were not as good as his master's. However, 99% of the information and records regarding the heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor were in the hands of the Confusion Sword Spirit. Not a single word was written in the information that the heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor had a master. Could it be that there was some great secret hidden in the historical records? Just like this training ground that suddenly appeared. Before this week, no one knew that Jetian Jiendi had left such a training ground. Who is His Majesty Jetian's master? What's his name? The confused sword spirit stared into Yi Wenjun's eyes and asked. Looking into the confused sword spirit's eyes, Yi Wenjun shivered. He felt that if he could not answer this question, he would die a horrible death. I think he was called the Master of Toning. Yi Wenjun scratched his head and tried hard to remember. Yes, that's the name. Master of Toning? I've never heard of it. The confused sword spirit fell into deep thought. But Gohan, who was at the side, broke out in cold sweat. Toning? Isn't that the military governor? Chapter 372. Pack your things and set off with Tianyuan. After resting in the temporary camp for less than an hour, the Bumi sword spirit summoned all the sword bearers from Yanjing and Yuzhang City and announced that they were ready to enter the trial ground. Sir, are we not going to wait for the people from the other 6 cities? One of the sword bearers from Yanjing City raised his hand and asked. Why should we wait for them? This is the trial ground built by Zhijiendi of Huaxia. They can only blame themselves for being too far away from here. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit grinned. The reason why Yanjing City spread the news to all 8 base cities was so that it would not destroy the atmosphere of human unity. However, if the people from the other cities were late because of the long journey, they could not blame Yuzhang City and Yanjing City for leaving first. Changyang Mountain was probably a place that had not been visited for hundreds of years. There were towering trees everywhere. Under Su Tianyuan's guidance, the group took many turns and finally arrived at the entrance of a cave. This is the place. The trial ground is in here. Su Tianyuan led everyone into the cave. After walking for a short distance, they saw a faint light shining from the depths of the cave. As they went deeper, the light became brighter and brighter until it was almost as bright as day. At this time, Gohan and the others had also arrived at the real entrance of the trial ground. It was a hall the size of a basketball court. There was a huge LED screen on one of the walls of the hall. The screen was lit up, but there were no pictures on it. There was only a sentence displayed on the screen. This is the trial ground for the younger generation. Sword bearers above treasure sword level will have their swords broken. Below this sentence was a small line of words. I Ching's friendly reminder. Is this really the trial ground left by Zhijiendi? The Bumi sword spirit asked when she saw the line of words on the screen. What if this is a trap set by Yuan Ko and the others? These young people are the future hope of our 2 base cities. If anything happens to them here, the future of humanity will be finished. As soon as Confusion Sword Spirit's voice trailed off, the display screen that said, "This is the training ground for juniors. Trespassers above the level of treasured swords will have their sword marks broken," was instantly replaced by another line of words. The second horizontal piece of the ceiling on the 6th floor of the Yuzhang Sword Tower's office was smashed. After a minute, the line of words changed back to what it was before. This is the training ground for the younger generation. Anyone who wields a sword above the level of a treasure sword will suffer a broken sword scar. It seemed like the words on the LED screen changed automatically every minute. What is the meaning of this? Seeing this sudden change, the Confusion Sword Spirit was taken aback. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit coughed and explained awkwardly, "Ahem, the ceiling had been smashed by Mistress Cloud Sky. In the end, we found a small box hidden in the ceiling. Inside the box was a piece of paper with the words Chongyang Mountain Trial Ground." The Confusion Sword Spirit nodded and no longer doubted the safety of the trial ground. "I understand now. It seems like this is the training ground left behind by Zhetian Jiandi." The reason was simple. The Yuzhang Sword Tower was built during the era of Zhetian Jiandi. Every brick and tile there was built by Zhetian Jiandi. The place was heavily guarded, especially the Sword Tower Master's office. It was impossible for anyone to enter without the permission of the Sword Tower Master, let alone hide such a brocade box in the ceiling. In that case, there was only one answer. The heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor had personally hidden this brocade box when he was building the Sword Pavilion. This was a secret that only Zhetian Jiandi knew. The reason why Zhetian Jiandi did this was because he guessed that people would doubt the authenticity of the trial ground. Therefore, he left this message on the LED screen to prove that this was indeed a trial ground created by Zhetian Jiandi and not a trap set up by Yuan Ko. His Majesty Zhetian is truly meticulous. The Confusion Sword Spirit's face was filled with sincere admiration. As a loyal fan of Zhetian Jiandi, he became even more loyal. Sigh. Although we can prove that this is indeed a trial ground left behind by His Majesty Zhetian, I don't understand why he would hide it from us. If it weren't for the two from the Lun Yen family and the Confucian family, we wouldn't have known that there was a trial ground hidden here even after 1,000 years, the Eagle Cat complained. "Brother Eagle Cat, you're wrong. In my opinion, you're the one who messed up the sequence," the Confusion Sword Spirit said. "Sequence? What sequence?" "You all think that the note hidden in the Sword Tower is to prove that the ruins were indeed set up by His Majesty Jiandi. Why don't you think about it the other way? That note is the correct way to open the trial ground. The correct way to open the trial ground is that His Majesty Zhetian wants you to find the note hidden in the ceiling and find the trial ground. He doesn't want you to find the trial ground for some inexplicable reason and then find the note." "Confusion Sword Spirit, when did you become so talkative?" the Eagle Cat complained. "Forget it. No matter what, this trial ground is safe. Let's arrange for these little fellows to enter the trial ground. By the way, Tianyuan, where is the entrance to the trial ground?" "It's here." Su Tianyuan walked to a spot in the northwest of the hall. The color of the floor was obviously different from the rest. The Confusion Sword Spirit and the Eagle Cat walked over to take a look and gasped. Why did the lines and equipment on the floor look exactly like the quantum teleportation circle? "This is a quantum teleportation circle?" the Eagle Cat muttered in disbelief. It was not clear if he was asking the Confusion Sword Spirit or the Confusion Sword Spirit. "If I'm not blind, then this is definitely a quantum teleportation circle." The Confusion Sword Spirit was also puzzled. This quantum teleportation circle was obviously a piece of black technology that humans had only developed in the last 100 years. How could Zhetian Jiandi set up a quantum teleportation circle here 700 years ago? At that time, humans had only just recovered the technological level before the Great Apocalypse. Perhaps he obtained the quantum teleportation circle from Yuan Ko, who specialized in science and technology. Some of the more technologically advanced Yuan Ko and Zhetian Jiandi might have obtained the quantum teleportation circle from them. This was the most reasonable explanation the Eagle Cat could come up with. "Forget it. We'll let those scientists worry about this. Now, let these little fellows step into the quantum teleportation circle and enter the trial ground," the Confusion Sword Spirit said decisively. "This is the trial ground?" When Gohan woke up from the dizziness brought about by the quantum teleportation circle, he found himself in a space surrounded by opaque walls of light. He was firmly surrounded by these walls of light on all sides. Only the top of his head was not covered by the walls of light. He could see the rock ceiling that was more than 20 meters high. Guhan should be in the inner space of Changyang Mountain. The whole mountain had been hollowed out by Zhetianjiandi. This enclosed space was not big, but it was not small either. Guhan estimated that this space should be a standard square space of 10 meters by 10 meters, which was about the size of an ordinary apartment. Song Yifei and the others who had passed through the teleportation circle with Guhan were not next to Guhan. It seemed that the final landing point was different every time they were teleported. Guhan guessed that every sword-bearer who entered the trial ground would most likely be placed in a room that was covered by a wall of light. What's there to train in such a small space? Could it be that the first step is to test how we can break through this wall of light that's surrounding us? Guhan walked to the side of the wall of light and touched it with his hand. He found that the wall of light felt like flesh to the touch, or rather, it felt like the bouncy and beautiful body of a young girl. Guhan tried to use force to see if he could break through the limits of the wall of light. In the end, he found that no matter how much force he used, it would be absorbed by the wall of light. It was impossible to break through the blockade of this wall of light with the strength of a sword-bearer at the treasure sword level. Participants, please take your position at the starting point. A dignified male voice rang out in the space. Guhan had seen some rare video material left by Zhetianjiandi. In those videos, Zhetianjiandi I Ching spoke exactly like this male voice. Guhan noticed that in the middle of the room, there were two words written in white paint. Starting point. It seemed that the male version of Zhetianjiandi wanted Guhan to stand on the words starting point. Guhan obeyed and stood on it obediently. Then, a hole appeared in the ground in front of Guhan, and a die the size of a watermelon rose out of the hole. Throw the die and decide your fate, Zhetianjiandi said. Guhan was still very obedient. He picked up the die and threw it into the air. The die spun for a while, and finally, the side with the word 5 on it landed on the top. You can take 5 steps forward, Zhetianjiandi said concisely. Just like that, the wall of light in front of Guhan disappeared. Inside the wall of light, there was also a 10-meter by 10-meter space surrounded by the wall of light. Guhan stepped into the next room, and the wall of light that had been opened before immediately closed up again. However, the wall of light in the second room opened up again. Guhan kept going through the opening of the wall of light to enter the next room. When he entered the fifth room, the wall of light stopped opening, and Guhan was trapped in the fifth room. Isn't this Monopoly? Guhan seemed to have understood the rules of this trial. Chapter 373. Monopoly was said to be a very popular game before the apocalypse. It was invented by Wang Shirtsong, the son of the richest man in China at that time. It was said that Wang Shirtsong was very dissolute. He bought a super cruise ship called Banana Cruise and put it on the boundless sea in Qianhai to have fun. Naturally, Wang Shirtsong didn't stay on the ship alone. There were countless female streamers and other beauties on his ship. Wang Shirtsong was worried. He was only one person, but there were hundreds of female streamers. If he had to go through all of them, he would be squeezed dry. Therefore, Wang Xikong invented the game Monopoly creatively. The room number of each female streamer became their serial number. Then, Wang Shirtsong started to roll the dice. The number he rolled would be the number of the female streamer's room. The room number that stopped at the end would be the room that Wang Shirtsong wanted to have fun in. Later on, Wang Shirtsong even innovated and made a whole bunch of action cards, role-playing cards, playstyle cards, item cards, and so on. Then, he would draw a card every time he entered a room. He was so engrossed in it that he forgot everything. When he came back from the sea, he had turned from Lin Zitsong to Lin Feng. Guhan stood in the fifth room. Then, a small bar rose up in the middle of the room. Guhan walked to the front of the bar counter and saw such a paragraph of explanation written on the plastic board fixed on the bar counter. 3-star combat room. Defeat the opponent guarding the room to enter the next room. It's time to fight. Gohan's heart skipped a beat. He pulled out Heavenly Sword from his back and released Heavenly Sword from its sword form. According to the requirements of the Confusion Sword Spirit, before entering the trial ground, all the sword ladies had to return to their sword form. Are we going to fight? Heavenly Sword yawned. Her eyes were a little swollen. It seemed that she had drunk a lot yesterday. However, when the word fight was mentioned, Heavenly Sword instantly became energetic. She had been bored to death for the past few days. Fighting was a good way to relax her muscles. The moment Heavenly Sword was released, the small bar returned to the ground. A wall of light suddenly disappeared. A person wearing strange armor slowly walked out of the wall of light and into the room. This person's armor was very gorgeous. It was blue and white, full of the beauty of ancient Greece. However, the design of this armor seemed to have a huge flaw. Although his shoulders, wrists, heart, and navel were protected by armor, other parts of his body were only covered by a thin layer of tight-fitting clothing. Logically speaking, with Gohan's swordsmanship, he had 100 ways to chop those parts that were not protected by armor into minced meat without touching them. However, this was also a common problem with most of the armored Yuan-ko warriors. They only pursued the beauty of the armor, and did not consider the actual practicality of the armor or whether it could defend against the enemy's attacks. Not only did it not provide any protection, it would also affect the warrior's mobility and consume the warrior's stamina. Rather than wearing such armor, it was better not to wear it. This way, he could move more quickly, and it would be easier for him to dodge in battle, just like King Yugo Jian's 100 Yu sword slaves. That's right. It seems like King Yu's armor is the same as this person's armor. As long as it's sexy, I don't care about anything else. I've seen this armor before. Etian stared at the person for a long time, then slapped his head. I remember, when I was working for I Ching, I once killed a Yuan-ko like this. Strange, he was clearly killed by me and absorbed by the dimensional whirlpool, so why is his body still here? What do you mean by working for a tiger? Zetian Jiendi is a tiger, so you're just sad? Gohan complained in his heart. However, Etian's words revealed a very important piece of information, which was that this Yuan-ko was the Yuan-ko that Zetian Jiendi had defeated. Strange, let me think, what is this Yuan-ko's name again? Etian tried hard to recall this Yuan-ko's name, but before she could, Gohan answered, "He is a bronze saint under the goddess of wisdom Athena of the Western Temple, a bronze saint of Pegasus." That's right, that's the name, bronze saint of Pegasus. After receiving Gohan's hint, Etian's memory instantly popped up in her mind. This Yuan-ko was the famous Saint Seiya. But I saw on the news a while ago that Saint Seiya of Pegasus protected Athena and repelled Sword Immortal Autumn Rain's ambush, which means that Saint Seiya of Pegasus is still alive. Why is he here? Gohan looked at the Saint Seiya of Pegasus and couldn't help but mutter to himself, Seiya. Upon hearing this name, the Pegasus Saint Seiya, who had been silent all this while, suddenly raised his head and revealed a handsome face. You know Senior Seiya is still alive. That's right, at least 3 months ago, Saint Seiya of Pegasus was still alive. 3 months later, I don't know. We don't have this information. Gohan nodded. Alive, it's good that he's alive. The Saint Seiya of Pegasus smiled and touched the right side of his chest with his left hand. I am Bronze Saint of Pegasus, Light Tooth. Thank you for informing me of Senior Seiya's information. Strange. I remember that Bronze Saints should be at the Ghost grade or Soul grade. Yuan-ko has been infected by the filth of the dimensional rift and lost his rationality, becoming a Yuan-ko who only knows how to kill. How can this Bronze Saint, Light Tooth, still retain his rationality? As though he saw the doubt in Gohan's heart, the Bronze Saint smiled bitterly. I did lose my rationality, but after I died, my soul and small universe were freed, and I regained my intelligence. Etian raised his brows and asked with interest, You're already dead? Of course, I'm already dead. Back then, you shattered my saint clothes and cut off my head. Don't tell me you've already forgotten about it. Light Tooth smiled at Etion. Tsk, to be able to maintain such a sincere smile towards the enemy who killed him. Saints, especially bronze saints, are indeed the embodiment of kindness and beauty. Etion asked, in other words, you're actually a ghost now. Light Tooth sighed and said, no, my soul has already returned to the world where I should be. Right now, I'm just a trace of His Majesty shrouding heaven's memory. You said that you're shrouding heaven's Gendi's memory? Gohan was silent for a moment. I heard that the Emperor's sword, Yuan-Tu Avicii, can sever all things that can be severed. Could it be that the Yuan-Tu Avicii can also sever memories? I don't know. Light Tooth shook his head. I only know that I'm a trace of His Majesty shrouding heaven's memory. My mission is to wait for the challenger to defeat me. Come, use your strength to defeat me or chase me out of this room. Then, you can open the next door and continue forward. All right, I'll fulfill your request. Gohan nodded, then patted Etion's shoulder. This is your old opponent. Defeat him again. Don't be inferior to the previous you. This heroine is 10 times stronger than before. Etion snorted in disdain. She suggested using Etion to attack Light Tooth's vitals. Unexpectedly, Light Tooth jumped and took a big step back, directly retreating from the door he just entered from. Victory! As Light Tooth retreated from the room, the male version of Shrouding Heaven Gendi's voice rang out, indicating that Gohan had already won this battle. Because according to the rules that Light Tooth had mentioned before, defeating him or chasing him out of the room would be considered a victory. In other words, Etion had only used one sword, and Light Tooth had already lost. What do you mean? Are you insulting this heroine? Etion's expression was very ugly. Last time, you could clearly last more than 10 moves. Do you think this heroine isn't worthy to be your opponent? No. It's the opposite. It's I, Light Tooth, who isn't worthy to be your opponent. Light Tooth shook his head. I've already been tortured to death by you once. I have no interest in being tortured to death by you again. If I had known that this sword mistress was you, I wouldn't have come out. Goodbye, heroine. I wish you and your sword mistress all the best. I hope you and your sword mistress can find the treasure that His Majesty shrouding heaven left behind. After speaking, Light Tooth disappeared from the door. The disappeared light wall reappeared, surrounding the room once more. The bar also rose up once more. That's strange. I remember that Saint Seiya's, especially Athena's bronze Saint Seiya's, would all fight to the death without retreating. Even if they died, they seemed to be able to jump out of the netherworld to fight again. Their willpower was terrifying. Why would this Light Fong admit defeat so easily? Because there was no one else around, Gohan didn't think silently. Instead, he directly spoke his thoughts. Now that you mention it, it's a little strange. This heroine also remembers that even after I chopped off his head, he still used his small universe and his body's instincts to exchange 3 moves with me. Even I Ching was amazed by his determination to fight, which was even stronger than a god's. However, this kind of personality of running away when he can't win is very similar to that guy shrouding heaven. Your descendants are really shameless, always praising that guy shrouding heaven, saying that he's one of the strongest Gendi. You don't know how much of a bastard she was when she was young. She only picked Yuan Ko, who had the same strength as her, to fight. Once there was any movement, she would be the first to escape. There were a few times when she even left this heroine behind to cover her retreat. It was really infuriating. Etion recalled some bad memories and complained indignantly. Now that you mention it, I actually understand. Gohan smiled slightly. It seems that this Light Tooth really is a trace of I Ching's memory. Although his appearance and strength are the same as the real Light Tooth, his personality has inherited I Ching's own. I really want to know what I Ching left for me here, and what is her relationship with me. Gohan rubbed the jasper ring in his hand and muttered to himself. Chapter 374. At this time, in the hall of the quantum teleportation array at the entrance of the Changyang Mountain Trial Formation, after sending all the sword-bearers to the quantum teleportation array, these two former comrades each took out a massage chair from their dimensional pockets, then lay comfortably on the chair and began to chat. Mystery, where's your Jean Lu? Why haven't I seen her? The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit had wanted to ask this question for a long time. Unlike his Eagle Cat Sword Spirit, all the sword ladies were artificial and didn't have any spiritual intelligence. They could just be placed in the scabbard, and he didn't have to worry about the sword ladies feeling unhappy or anything. Among the sword ladies of the Mystery Sword Spirit, there was a natural sword lady, which was the spirit sword lady of the Mystery Sword Spirit, Jean Lu. Jean Lu was one of the few spirit sword ladies forged by humans, because almost all the sword ladies forged by humans were famous swords, treasured swords, or ancient swords. For example, Dragon Spring Sword was forged in the same furnace as Jean Lu, so it was a famous sword lady, not a spirit sword lady. Oh right, Fish Guts was also forged in the same furnace as Jean Lu. She was even worse off, as she was only a treasured sword lady. Only a few sword ladies forged by ancient people had crossed the threshold of spirit sword lady, such as Gan Jiang and Mo Xie. These sword ladies that had crossed the threshold of spirit sword lady were all extremely spiritual, and if they stayed in the scabbard for a long time, they would rebel. Therefore, Jean Lu would generally follow behind the mystery sword spirit, and rarely disappeared. I sent her to greet the sword-bearers of Jerusalem base city. The mystery sword spirit curled his lips. Their place is all sand, where would there be such a dense forest? However, they have already entered the range of Changyang Mountain, but they can't find the entrance to the trial ground. I can't be separated from the kids in our city, so I can only send Jean Lu to pick them up. TSK, these donkey heads are really fast. The Eagle Cat mocked. It was obvious that the Eagle Cat didn't like the Jerusalem base city. It could even be said that it disliked it. Jerusalem base city was the only base city in the Middle East, and it was also the only base city ruled by religion. The sword bearers there were basically madmen from the Green sect, and it did not have a good reputation among the other 7 base cities. People often heard stupid things like stoning women to death. If it were not for the overall situation of the human race, Yen Jing would not have told the people of Jerusalem about the trial ground. Tell Jean Lu to go around the forest a few more times. It's best if she goes around until night time. That way we can buy more time for our children. The Eagle Cat's sword spirit I glowed as it came up with this idea. Confusion sword spirit smiled. Have you forgotten? Jean Lu is born with no sense of direction. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit's face stiffened. It spat on the ground before bursting into laughter. You scammer! Why are you even more cunning than I am? Let's not talk about those disgusting donkey head. Oh Eagle Cat, how come I've never seen it before? How can you be so shrewd? Confusion Sword Spirit said with an expression as if he had just been away for 3 days. I'm shrewd? The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit was taken aback. Confusion Sword Spirit, others may not know, but you know me. Back in the days I had the worst face, the worst temper, the most direct words, and the easiest to offend. When have I ever been shrewd? Well, let me ask you, why are you still acting like nothing happened when such a big thing happened in Yuzhong City? You don't look anxious at all. Confused, the Sword Spirit of Confusion asked. Are you talking about Fort Yuyang? The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit looked a little gloomy. If it were a few decades ago I would be happy. But now, I'm not worried about life and death anymore. It's not the first time Fort Yuyang has been attacked, and most of the sword bearers have returned. I don't have anything to worry about. Oh, then you don't have to worry about the invasion that Yuzhong City is about to face. Confusion Sword Spirit asked. What? What did you say? The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit immediately lost his composure. No one had ever told him that Yuzhong City was also facing an invasion. Looks like you've been kept in the dark. Confusion Sword Spirit shook his head. Looks like Yuzhong City is taking this trial more seriously than I thought. In order to let you lead the team with peace of mind, they even hid such an important matter from you. Me too, I shouldn't have mentioned this to you at all. No, Confusion Sword Spirit, thank you for telling me this. If you didn't tell me, I'm afraid I would have been kept in the dark forever. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit's expression became a little fierce. What's the situation in Yuzhong City right now? You must tell me everything you know. If Sword Immortal Cloud Sky and Sword Immortal Baiju are keeping this from you, then they must have their reasons. If I tell them, then wouldn't I be ruining the internal affairs of Yuzhong City? The Sword Spirit Confusion Mist said with a troubled expression. If you don't tell me, you'll be ruining our friendship. Make your choice. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit said very firmly. Sigh, I'm afraid of you. But let's make a deal. You can only return to Yuzhong City after the trial is over. You're not allowed to go back by yourself. I'm not responsible for looking after your child, Confusion Sword Spirit said. Don't worry, I'm not that kind of person. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit nodded in agreement. Actually, I don't know much. I only know that this time, the Western Demon Beasts and the Western Temple of God have joined forces to attack Yuzhong City. They've already occupied Fort Yuyang as their base and are preparing to launch a major attack on Yuzhong City. I can confirm that at least 4 U-level Yuan Ko have already arrived at Fort Yuyang. Right now, Yuzhong City has entered the highest state of alert. They've also sent out a request for help to the other 8 base cities. I don't know about the other cities, but our Yanjing City's sword-bearers have already set out to support Yuzhong City under the leadership of the 10 Directions Immortal Sword. However, the road from Yanjing City to Yuzhong City has already been closed. We can only reach Yuzhong City through the Fujian province. This is the news I received yesterday. The signal in Gansu province is too bad. Since then, I haven't been in contact with Yanjing City. I don't know the latest situation. Confusion Sword Spirit said everything he knew. Thank you. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit clasped his fists at Confusion Sword Spirit gratefully. Confusion Sword Spirit, there's something I've never told you before. Now I'm going to tell you. Oh, what is it? Don't tell me you've confessed to Mia Extermination. Confusion Sword Spirit joked. Mia Extermination was a sword-bearer who teamed up with Confusion Sword Spirit and the Eagle Cat. Now, he was a Spirit Sword level sword-bearer. Back then, the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit had a crush on Mia Extermination. However, due to various reasons, he never confessed. Later, the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit's parents arranged a blind date and found someone to marry. Since then, the matter had died down. Who would have thought that the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit would bring it up now? No, I haven't been in contact with Mia Extermination for 3 months. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit blushed. Alright, you and I haven't been in contact for 3 years. And you said you still have a crush on Mia Extermination. Look, Mia Extermination is still alone. You still have a chance as long as... Enough! The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit forcefully interrupted the Confusion Sword Spirit. Confusion Sword Spirit, what I want to tell you is that I, the Eagle Cat, am that kind of person. What? What do you mean? The Confusion Sword Spirit was dumbfounded. When he reacted, the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit's figure disappeared from the hall. Confusion Sword Spirit, I'll leave the children of Yuzhong City to you. Bring them back to Yanjing City. If anything happens to Yuzhong City, they will be the last seeds of Yuzhong City. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit's words echoed in the air. This guy still has the same temper. He hasn't changed in his life. The Confusion Sword Spirit smiled bitterly. He had no intention of chasing the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit back, even if he could easily catch up with the eagle cat and suppress it to the point where it couldn't move. Damn it, throwing these children on my head again. What I'm afraid of has happened. Confusion Sword Spirit muttered. He had tacitly accepted the eagle cat sword spirit's entrustment. Strange, the people from Jerusalem are already at the door. Could it be that Jean-Lou's poor sense of direction has been cured? After a few minutes, the Confusion Sword Spirit was shocked again. After defeating the bronze Saint Seiya, a die appeared on the newly raised bar. This meant that Gohan could move forward again. Gohan threw the die casually. Luck was not bad on his second roll. He actually rolled a 6. Without any nonsense, Gohan directly passed through the 6 rooms. A new bar rose up, and the information of the room was written on it. Event Room. Please draw an event card to trigger a new event. This was indeed the trick of a tycoon. The side of the small bar suddenly opened. Countless cards made of unknown materials flew out from the opened small opening. After dancing in the air for a while, they neatly arranged themselves into a square formation. It was just like the broadcast gymnastics in the school field. Gohan carefully observed these cards. He noticed that there were some complicated decorative patterns on the back of the card. The words "event" were written in the center, as if to prove that these cards were indeed event cards. However, there was nothing on the front of the card. It was just a piece of white paper without any words. Please draw a card. The male version of Jiandi's voice sounded again. Perhaps the specific words would only be revealed after the card was drawn. Gohan counted the number of cards and found that there were 12 horizontally and 10 vertically. There was a total of 120 cards. There was nothing much to choose from. Gohan randomly picked one card from the square formation. After Gohan made his choice, the rest of the cards flew back to the interior of the bar. Then, as expected, a line of words appeared on the originally blank card. You have encountered a dimensional shift. You will randomly appear in any space within the trial array. Before Gohan could react after reading this, a strong light shone directly into Gohan's eyes, causing Gohan to instantly lose his vision. After the strong light dissipated, he heard an extremely cautious and nervous voice. Who are you, demon? State your name. Wait, why does this voice sound so familiar? Chapter 375. Gohan, why are you here? Am I starving to the point that I'm in a trance? Liu Ling rubbed her eyes in disbelief. She had never imagined that Gohan would suddenly appear in front of her. Ling! Gohan's eyes finally regained their normal vision. Then, he saw Liu Ling standing in front of him. This made Gohan heave a sigh of relief in his heart. Finding Liu Ling meant that one of the objectives of this trip had been achieved. However, this objective had been achieved a little too easily. He had only entered the trial grounds for about 10 minutes, and he had already successfully found Liu Ling. Gohan had thought that he would have to search for at least 10 minutes before he could see Liu Ling. Hey, cut the crap. I'm asking you, do you have any food on you? Liu Ling's face was full of surprise. She was so surprised that stars could be seen in her eyes. She stared at Gohan passionately as she asked. Of course I do. Gohan nodded. In order to feed this adorable Qingpin, he had restocked once before he set off and again at Fort Yeyang. Naturally, he had no lack of food on him. Gohan took out some steaming hot rice, green vegetables, bright red braised pork, unopened ham sausages, a bag of beef jerky, and the last kilogram of crispy crisps from his dimensional pocket. That's right. Gohan had also very considerately brought out bowls and chopsticks for Liu Ling to use. That's all. You can eat. Halfway through Gohan's sentence, Liu Ling began to eat unceremoniously. She directly picked up the basin of braised pork, picked up the chopsticks, and put them in her mouth like dumplings. She took a random bite and stuffed it straight into her stomach. Seeing that almost a quarter of the braised pork in the basin was gone, Liu Ling reluctantly put down the braised pork. She slowly scooped up a bowl of rice and picked up some vegetables. At this moment, Liu Ling finally displayed the elegance of a young lady from an aristocratic family. When Liu Ling put down her bowl and chopsticks, indicating that she really couldn't eat anymore, Guhan took back all the food. Isn't it a little embarrassing? Seeing Guhan clean up the dishes like a housewife, Liu Ling's face started to flush. I'm not like this usually, I'm just too hungry. Liu Ling tried her best to explain, and I don't eat much, but not only have I not eaten for the past few days, I've also been fighting every day, so my appetite has suddenly increased. I usually only eat half, about a third. A quarter of a basin of braised pork, 5 whole bowls of rice, a kilogram of vegetables, and dozens of sausages. Even if this was multiplied by a third, it would still be a frightening appetite. It's fine, I'm used to it. You don't even eat a third of what Qing Pin eats, you don't have to worry about it, Guhan said seriously. He really wasn't complaining. Hey Guhan, is this the young lady from the Liunian aristocratic family that you're trying to save? Etian, who had been drinking and laughing at the two of them, immediately perked up when she saw that Liu Ling had finally finished eating. She took the initiative to ask, Hey little girl, let me ask you, who is this person from the Liunian aristocratic family? He's Ling's 7th-generation ancestor. Liu Ling answered without even thinking. It seemed that Liu Ling had memorized the names of the Liunian aristocratic family's ancestors. Your lady Etian? Liu Ling had been so focused on eating that she didn't even look at Etian. Now that Etian had taken the initiative to ask, Liu Ling began to observe Etian. She quickly recognized that this sword lady was Etian. How did you recognize me? Etian asked curiously. The gourd on Lady Etian's head is unique and unparalleled. Naturally, Ling recognized it with a single glance. Liu Ling smiled and bowed to Etian, the 29th-generation descendant of the Liunian aristocratic family greets Lady Etian. This was the greeting that every sword wielder would use when meeting a new sword lady. However, this was only limited to natural-born sword ladies. Man-made sword ladies could not receive this treatment. After all, man-made sword ladies had worrisome intelligence. Whether they had a soul or not was a matter of debate. Not bad, Guhan. You've actually managed to synchronize with Lady Heavenly. When Lady Heavenly and I touched the hilt of Lady Heavenly's sword, Lady Heavenly didn't react at all. She didn't like me at all. How pitiful! Fleeting Cold, who had eaten her fill, returned to her noisy personality. She began to discuss Etian with Guhan. To be honest, Liu Ling was a little jealous of Guhan. This guy had actually succeeded with Lady Etian. It seemed that not only had she suffered in coming to Changyang Mountain, she had also missed out on many interesting things. This is fate. Guhan's reply was concise and comprehensive. Liu Ling could not refute him. As a result, Liu Ling began to ask questions to Etian. She pulled on Etian's arm intimately and asked unhappily, Lady Etian, why didn't you choose me? Why did you choose this guy? This is fate. Etian sighed. If I could choose, I would definitely choose you. How great is it? I've long wanted to become the sword lady of your Liunian aristocratic family. Unfortunately, fate makes fools of people. I always meet stupid swordsmen like you. Cough cough, Ling, what happened just now? Why are you so hungry? Didn't you just disappear for 2 weeks? Guhan felt that he had to interrupt this conversation. Otherwise, who knew how Etian would ridicule him? For some reason, when Guhan saw Liu Ling, he actually felt a little excited. He did not want to embarrass himself in front of Liu Ling. However, the question he had just asked was also a question in Guhan's mind. He could not understand why Liu Ling was so hungry. Due to the existence of the dimensional pocket, every sword wielder would store enough food to last them for about a year in their dimensional pocket. Some cautious sword bearers would even store 3 or even 10 years' worth of food. Guhan really could not understand. Liu Ling had only disappeared for 2 weeks. Why did it seem like she had not eaten for 5 or 6 days? Don't mention it. I'm so unlucky. Liu Ling was infuriated by Gohan's question. You don't know. That sky-covering Jiandi is crazy. What kind of stupid test is he giving me? He wants me to compete with a husky in terms of eating, and if I lose, I have to hand over all my food except for the nutrient solution. So you lost? Asked Gohan. Yes, I lost. Liu Ling nodded. How can a human eat more than a husky? But don't you have the nutrient solution? Only a husky would eat that kind of disgusting stuff. Hey Gohan, thank you. After a moment of silence, Liu Ling raised her head and looked into Gohan's eyes, and spoke with sincerity. Gohan could see tears in Liu Ling's eyes. The young lady of the Fleeting Time family is actually crying. You don't have to thank me. I'm not the only one who came to save you. Many people from Yanjing City, Yuzhong City, and the other 6 base cities have all sent people to save you, Gohan said calmly. They're here for this training ground. Liu Ling said with disdain, they can't wait for me to die here. That would be the end of the Fleeting Time family line. What a wonderful thing. Then have you ever thought that I'm here for the trial as well? Gohan retorted. In truth, Gohan knew that he was not here because of Liu Ling. He was here because of the promise he made to I Ching in the dungeon. Who cares about that? I know you're here, and you're the first person to find me. Liu Ling shook her head and leaned on Gohan's shoulder. You don't know this, but I've always thought that I'm a strong person. It's only after I brought these people here that I realized how fragile I am. I can be afraid, lonely, fearful, and hungry. You might not believe it, but I've always thought that I'm the chosen one before I came here. I'm the heir of the Fleeting Time family, and these emotions will never appear on me. Look, Gohan, I'm really happy to see you appear in front of me. The moment I saw you, my heart almost jumped out of my chest. Fate in this world is really wonderful. I went to Yuzhong City just for Ishian, but I didn't expect to meet you and Qing Pin. I didn't expect to pretend to be a couple with you. The most unexpected thing is that the first person I saw in this endless wait and hunger is you. Gohan, don't you think this is fate? It's fate. Is this the true feelings of a young girl? When Gohan heard Liu Ling's words, even if his heart was ruthless, his whole body was stirred up. No matter how stupid Gohan was, he could still hear the heart of a young girl from Liu Ling's words. Liu Ling has fallen in love with me, Gohan is almost certain. So, does Gohan like Liu Ling? Gohan can't answer this question himself. Before he met Qing Pin, Gohan could tell himself very clearly that he won't fall in love with anyone before he avenged his parents. But now, Gohan doesn't know the answer. Gohan's heart is no longer the cold, dark Gohan who can kill the Fleeting Time calendar. Gohan's heart has been half occupied by the winter sun. Gohan knows how to care for others, think for others, take care of others' difficulties. Yes, he also knows how to complain. In short, Gohan can no longer tell himself very clearly that he wants to be a heartless person. Do I like Liu Ling? Gohan asked himself this question again. Maybe he likes her a little, but more than that, he is at a loss. I don't know if this is fate, Finally, Gohan said firmly, but I will definitely take you out, take you away from here. When he said this, Artoria's appearance appeared in Gohan's mind for no reason. She was wearing a white wedding dress. Chapter 376. How is it? How much do you know about Fort Yuyang? Inside the conference room, Zhu Wudao was discussing the situation with his subordinate. The day before yesterday, which was the 3rd day after Fort Yuyang was conquered, the fort was completely shrouded in a black fog. Fort Yuyang was completely shrouded in a black fog. Not only could this black fog block vision, but it could also block all detection devices. The 100 drones from Yuzhong City never came out after flying in. Obviously, they had all been destroyed by the Yuan Shen inside. Zhu Wudao had no choice but to take the risk. He sent a team of sword bearers, all of whom were treasure-grade sword maidens, into the black fog. They used their naked eyes to scout the situation at Fort Yuyang. The void-piercing sword maidens were treasure-grade sword maidens, and their fighting abilities were extremely weak. They were among the bottom few sword maidens of the same rank. However, the void-piercing sword maidens had a special ability. They could travel through space within a kilometer. If they risked their lives, they could even travel through space continuously. It was the best way to scout and escape. Sure enough, the small team successfully rushed out of the black fog and brought the latest news from Yuyang Fortress. However, this news made Zhu Wudao feel a little hopeless. Sir, according to the team's information, not only did they find the Western Beast and Western Temple's Yuan Ko, but even the Martyr's Palace's Yuan Ko has appeared. According to their calculations before they fled, they sensed the aura of 5 Universe Yuan Ko and 26 Nether and Meteor Yuan Ko. However, the detection range of the Delusion Splitter doesn't cover the entire Fort Yuyang. At least a third of the area hasn't been detected, so the number of Yuan Ko might be even higher, an official from the intelligence department answered carefully. At the same time, his heart was filled with pessimism. The Delusion Splitter was the only unique existence among the void-piercing sword maidens. Its ability was to break through magical barriers within a certain range and see the real situation around it. The void-piercing sword maidens had to bring along the Delusion Splitter when they move. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to get any real information. There were already so many Yuan Kos that had been detected. Including those that hadn't been detected, Yuan Ko's strength was already more than 3 times that of the entire Yuzhong City. This was a power that could definitely break through Yuzhong City's system. It's okay. How's our scouting team? Are they all right? Zhu Wudao coughed. The situation is not looking good. The leader of this team sacrificed 60 years of his life in order to escape with the Delusion Vanquishing Sword. He sacrificed himself on the way back to Yuzhong City. The rest of the team members also consumed an average of about 30 years of their lifespan. At this point, tears welled up in the corner of the official's eyes. They were clearly young men in their 20s or 30s, but now all of their hair is white and their sideburns are white. They look like old men in their 60s. Their lifespans have been greatly overdrawn. They are all heroes of Yuzhong City. Zhu Wudao's hands trembled slightly. This was intolerable for an immortal sword wielder. This meant that Zhu Wudao was already old, so old that he couldn't even control his own body. Let them have a good rest, then go to the warehouse to get the eternal water for them to drink. This is the last thing we can do, Zhu Wudao said weakly. The eternal water was a type of spiritual water that could increase one's lifespan. It was a very rare treasure. There were very few reserves in Yuzhong City. Usually, it was used by sword immortals and sword spirits to increase their lifespans. Now that Zhu Wudao had given such a treasure to a group of treasure sword wielder, it could be considered as making up for some of the guilt in his heart. What about the other base cities? Have their reinforcements arrived? Zhu Wudao recovered his emotions and returned to a calm state. He began to inquire about the situation in the other base cities. The current situation in Yuzhong City was very obvious. It was impossible to resist this attack with Yuzhong City's own strength. They could only hope that they could get enough support from the other base cities. The first rescue team from Yanjing City has set off. It is estimated that they will arrive in Yuzhong City in 3 days. In addition, the Lionian family has sent people to negotiate with the dragon race of the East Sea, hoping to use the power of the dragon race to transport reinforcements from London and Los Angeles. However, they will only arrive in 10 days at the earliest. What about the other 4 cities? Have they replied to us? Zhu Wudao was a little angry. Why had only 3 base cities expressed their stance? What about the other 4? Were they going to leave them to die? Jerusalem City said that they are in the middle of Ramadan and must wait until Ramadan is over before they can support us. Leningrad City said that they have also detected a large number of Yuan Ko gathering around them. Maybe they will ask for reinforcements then. Berlin City and Buenos Aires City did not have any reply. Their immortal sword wielder doesn't seem to be in the cities, so they can't give them clear orders. F***ck these bastards. Have they forgotten how Yuzhong City did its best to help them when they were in trouble? These bastards. Zhu Wudao could no longer control his emotions. Only 3 of the other 7 base cities have agreed to send reinforcements. 2 of the base cities' reinforcements will only arrive in 10 days. What does this mean? Will Yuan Ko wait 10 days before attacking the city? President, please calm down. You are the one who needs to stay calm the most in the city. The official tried to persuade him. Zhu Wudao waved his hand weakly. Go and do your investigation. Report to me immediately about Yuan Ko's every move. Go. Yes, sir. The official retreated. Zhu Wudao's eyes looked past the window towards the boundless sky. Lu Ren, oh Lu Ren. Daddy hopes that you can stay in the trial grounds as long as possible. Daddy might not be able to see you again. You said that you have been trapped in this room for 4 days. Gohan looked at the rising bar counter in confusion. What mission is in this room? It can actually trap you for 4 days. It's this damned apple-picking mission. Speaking of this mission, Liuyan Ling was furious. She pointed at the mission prompt on the bar counter and said, when the mission starts, a fruit tree will appear, and the mission requires me to pick 50 fruits in 3 seconds. How can I do that? I've tried my best, but I can only pick 15 fruits at most. Pick fruits? Gohan was stunned when he heard the contents of the mission. Then, he revealed a strange smile. Ling, can you please demonstrate for me? Are you trying to make fun of me, Liuyan Ling? Liuyan Ling's face was full of anger, but she did not refuse Gohan. Instead, she took a few steps forward, placed her hand on the bar counter, and shouted angrily, I'm ready. The fruit tree will appear in 5 seconds. Please get ready. Sky covering Jindy said in a cold male voice. Then, the entire illusion changed in an instant. The originally undecorated blank room turned into a green grassland. About 5 seconds later, in the center of the grassland, a tall fruit tree rose from the ground. This is an apple tree. Gohan recognized the origin of the tree at a glance. What? You're asking why Gohan knows that this is an apple tree? Isn't this nonsense? Can't you see that the tree is full of apples? The moment the apple tree rose from the ground, Liuyan Ling also jumped up. Her figure was as fast as lightning, passing through the canopy quickly. 3 seconds later, the apple tree disappeared, leaving behind a girl with a bag full of apples in her arms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 17, 18, 19, 20. Liuyan Ling began to count the apples in her arms, but Liuyan Ling did not use the normal counting method. Instead, she used the apples as bullets, throwing them at Gohan. Every time she threw them, she counted them. By the time all the apples were thrown, Gohan had been hit a total of 20 times. This is what you get for making fun of me. After hitting Gohan, Liuyan Ling was obviously in a good mood. Her face was also full of a happy smile. She laughed very happily, a kind of happiness that could not be suppressed. She could not remember when was the last time she laughed so happily. As you wish. Gohan shook his head. Fleeting Time Ling was just throwing random apples at him. He did not aim or predict where the apples would land. Gohan was able to dodge all of the apples with ease, and not a single one of them landed on him. However, Gohan did not choose to dodge. Instead, he stood there and used his body to catch all the apples. Anyway, these apples were not painful for Gohan's strong body. At most, it was like being bitten by a mosquito. It was also a good thing to let Liuyan Ling vent. She must have held back a lot of grievances these days. I didn't expect to pick 20 apples this time. It's a third better than my best record. After smashing the apples, Liu Ling found that her speed and movement were a lot better than before. This made Liu Ling very surprised. When Liu Ling's movement was practiced to this level, it was impossible to have a big improvement in a short time unless the physical fitness had been greatly improved. For example, this times 1/3. Under normal circumstances, Liu Ling estimated that she would need at least another 5 years of hard work to achieve it. Above 20, every time he increased the number of apples he could pluck, he would have to put in double the effort. Could it be that because he is by my side, my heart is happy, so I unconsciously improve? Liu Ling began to imagine in her heart. Unfortunately, this beautiful idea was mercilessly destroyed by Guhan in less than a second. I guess you should be full and have strength. Guhan, this idiot, said the truth blindly. Tsk, if your stomach is full, then come. Let me see how many you can catch. Liu Ling was so angry with Guhan's words that her nose turned red. She shouted for Guhan to try. I'm not in a hurry. Guhan waved his hand. He turned to Etion, who had been watching the show, and said with a smile, Etion, why don't you try? Chapter 377. 1, 2, 3, 4. 22, 23. Etion counted all the apples in her hand. In 3 seconds, Etion had plucked 23 apples, 2 more than Liu Ling. Lady Etion, you're so amazing. Liu Ling clapped with all her might, trying her best to flatter Etion. Of course. Amongst all the sword ladies, I, Etion, am one of the best. Etion said cockily. After saying that, he even winked at Guhan. I don't deny that your swordsmanship is one of the best among all the sword ladies. Guhan frowned. But why do you have to throw the apples at me when you're counting? Is there a need for that? Of course, I can throw the apples at other women, but I can't, Etion said with her hands on her hip. Then, Guhan fell silent. He suddenly realized that he couldn't refute Etion's words at all. Even if he could, arguing with a sword lady like Etion would only waste time and lower her favorability towards him. There was no use at all. All right, I've finished plucking. Now it's your turn. Although your swordsmanship isn't as good as mine, you're still half as good as mine. If you can pluck 13 or 14 apples, you'll pass, Etion said cockily. Heaven Reliance said smugly. She seemed to have forgotten just how terrifying Guhan's swordsmanship was in that 1 versus 200 battle. Meanwhile, Liu Ling looked at Guhan with a snicker, waiting for Guhan to pluck the apples. Perhaps I can use this test to see just how much of a gap there is between me and Guhan. Liu Ling mumbled in her heart. She did not have a real understanding of Guhan's swordsmanship. In her opinion, Guhan had only learned ancient martial arts from an unorthodox source. It was impossible for it to be compared to the foundation that had been taught by the Lu Nian aristocratic family since he was young. Guhan nodded and then activated the switch on the small bar counter. 5 seconds later, the apple tree appeared again. Guhan jumped onto the tree, and the leaves danced wildly. When the apple tree disappeared, Guhan appeared in front of everyone with an armful of apples. 15 in total. Guhan naturally wouldn't be like Liu Ling and Etion, using counting as an excuse to play a game of smashing people. Guhan wasn't that childish. He just glanced at the apple indifferently, reported the number, and directly threw the apple on the ground. Not bad, not bad. It's at the level when I was so hungry that I fainted. Liu Ling smiled and clapped her hands, thinking happily in her heart. This idiot's strength was indeed, as she had guessed, much weaker than her. It seemed that she could casually bully him in the future. As for Etion, he gave Guhan a very disdainful look. Liar, if you have the ability, then show me your true strength. Oh, this sentence was said by Etion through the sword mark, so it was impossible for Liu Ling to hear it. This is my true strength, I didn't hide anything. Guhan shook his head and replied Etion through the sword mark. My meridians haven't been completely connected, so I can only display 60% of my strength. Being able to pluck 15 apples is already the result of my full strength. Your meridians are damaged? Why didn't I know? Etion was startled, his tone seemed to be a little worried. When it was damaged, I hadn't synchronized with you yet, so of course you didn't know. Gohan smiled bitterly. Moreover, you've never asked me about meridians. Wait, if 15 is 60% of your strength, doesn't that mean your true strength is 25? With a simple division, Etion calculated the shocking number 25. This meant that the baseline of Gohan's strength was higher than Etion's by 2? Although Etion had sensed that Gohan's swordsmanship strength shouldn't be lower than his during the last battle in the Yaoguang Sword Sect Challenge, he didn't expect that Gohan's strength to be a little stronger than his. Although the quantitative comparison of plucking apples was too one-sided and didn't have much value, Etion felt that he was a head shorter than Gohan, just like how he was a head shorter than I Ching back then. What are you guys secretly talking about through the sword mark? Liuyan Ling saw that Gohan and Etion's expressions were stiff at the same time, and knew that Etion and Gohan were whispering to each other. She started to feel a little sour in her heart. They were actually talking behind her back. It was such a hateful feeling. I just told Etion that my meridians are damaged, so I can't unleash my full strength. Otherwise, I could at least pluck 15. Gohan answered honestly. This was the truth, there wasn't a single bit of falsehood in it. However, when Liuyan Ling heard this, she couldn't help but chuckle, and the little thoughts in her heart disappeared. It turned out that this Gohan felt that he had lost face in front of her, so he forced his meridians to be damaged. What 25? Even if he trained for another 30 years, he wouldn't be able to break through 25. Alright, even if you can pluck 25, it's useless. This task requires you to pluck 50. If you can't do it, you can only wait for 7 days to be directly sent out by the training array. Liuyan Ling said with waning interest. She had stayed in this training array for 2 more weeks, so naturally, she was very clear about the details and routines of the training array. There were 2 ways to leave this training array. One was to reach the end of the training array, and then she would be able to obtain the reward that Zhetian Jiendi had placed in the training array. The second way was to stay in a room for 7 days, and then the training array would automatically send you out. However, you would never be able to enter this training array again. This was already the 4th day that Liuyan Ling had been trapped in this room. In another 3 days, Liuyan Ling would be forcefully sent out, which made Liuyan Ling very unhappy. No, things aren't that bad. Plucking 50 apples in 3 seconds is something that can only be done by a spirit sword level sword wielder. However, this training array restricts sword wielder above treasure sword level from entering. This means that there must be a way for sword wielder of treasure sword level to pass the test. It's impossible for Zhetian Jiendi to set a dead end. Gohan was not infected by Liuyan Ling's pessimism, but calmly analyzed. As he spoke, he ran to the small bar and carefully read the words written on it a few times. The corner of his mouth revealed a smile of understanding. Ling, let's try again. Gohan touched the small bar and said slowly. Hey, why don't you give up? It's useless even if you try a few more times. No one can pluck 50 apples in 3 seconds. Liuyan Ling said weakly. She had already been tortured by this damn test for 4 days. She didn't want to pluck any more apples. It's naturally impossible for 1 person, but what if it's 3 people? Gohan pursed his lips. If you release Heaven's Inquisition, we'll have 4 people. 3 people together? Liuyan Ling was stunned. You can play like that? Isn't there a limit to 1 person participating? Since I can stay in the same room with you, why can't we complete the test at the same time? Gohan knocked on the small bar counter. From the beginning to the end, this instruction did not state that multiple people are not allowed to move together. Do you think so? The result was self-evident. Guhan, Tian, and Liuyan Ling rushed into the apple tree at the same time and plucked the apples in a frenzy. In 3 seconds, a total of 58 apples had fallen into the hands of these 3 people. Then, when the small bar rose again, the long-awaited die finally appeared. This also meant that Guhan and Liuyan Ling had successfully passed the test and could enter the next room. Damn it, this actually works. Liuyan Ling looked at the die and scratched her head in annoyance. Why didn't I think of this test for multiple people? I was actually trapped by such a simple thing for 4 whole days. Don't make things difficult for yourself. Even if you thought of it before I came, you would still have to wait for 4 days. After all, there would only be one person in the entire trial. You wouldn't be able to find anyone to help you. Guhan's words made Liuyan Ling feel much better. That's right, Guhan was right. This was the truth. It was all Guhan's fault for coming too late. If he had come a step earlier, I would have been able to leave this place long ago. Ling, come and take a look here. Guhan suddenly interrupted Liuyan Ling, who was trying hard to push the blame away, and called her over to the side of the die. Ling, what do you think? Why are there 2 die here? Liuyan Ling exclaimed in surprise when she saw the die on the small bar. There were 2 die, one big and one small, on the small bar. This was a situation that had never happened before. Liuyan Ling had passed through no less than 30 rooms, and there was only 1 die every time. There had never been a situation where there were 2 die. Is it because there are 2 people in the room now, so there are 2 die? Liuyan Ling voiced out her guess. This guess was very reasonable. In the past, there was only Liuyan Ling, so naturally there was only 1 die. Now that there was an additional person, Guhan, wouldn't it be normal for there to be 2 die? No, if the dice were given to both of us, then the dice should be the same size, not a big one and a small one. This big one is double the size of the small one. I know the reason for this die. Tian looked at the die and his pupils shrank. He recalled some dusty memories. When I Ching encounters something she can't decide, or when she needs to make a choice, she likes to use the die to decide the final result. If the choice only involves her, then she will use a normal-sized die. If it involves 2 people, she will use a bigger die. If it involves the whole team, she will use a specially made die the size of a big watermelon. But this girl just likes to lie to herself. No matter what the result is, she will only choose according to the answer in her heart. She has never been a person who leaves her fate to fate. She just likes to play with fate. So, I'm guessing that Tian gave you 2 die, 1 big and 1 small, to let you choose for yourselves whether you want to move forward together or alone in the next trial. If you want to move together, you can use the big die. If you want to move alone, you can use the small die. It's that simple. Tian said as he poured alcohol into his mouth like crazy. After explaining, he turned into a stream of light and flew back into his scabbard. Don't bother me for the next 24 hours. If there's a fight, go find your Qinpin. You should also let her exercise a little. Eating meat every day and not exercising, she might not be able to get married. Chapter 378. In the hall of the trial gate, the mystic sword spirit, who was resting on the sofa, suddenly opened his eyes and saw a large group of people in white robes walking in one by one from the tunnel. They came pretty fast. Luomi sword spirit muttered. Then, he walked to the front of the white-robed man and stood in front of Luomi sword spirit. Your Excellency Luomi, long time no see. May Allah bless your health. Effendi Muhammad, I didn't expect you to be the one leading the team this time. Weren't you imprisoned by your sect leader? Why are you released so soon? The mystic sword spirit sneered. Obviously, he didn't like this Effendi. Please be careful with your words, Your Excellency Mystic Sword Spirit. He is a great prophet. You can't use such a disrespectful title like leader. Although Effendi's words were full of dissatisfaction, his face didn't show any expression. Jerusalem has already reached this point? I remember when your sect master had just taken over, even if I called him sect master in front of him, he wouldn't have any objections. What's wrong? Now that your wings have hardened, you think you can stand alone among the humans? The mystic sword spirit didn't even look at Afundi. The transmission array is over there. Let your sword bearers enter the trial ground. Thank you. Afundi nodded at the white-robed sword bearers he brought. All the sword bearers lined up in an orderly manner and entered the trial formation one by one from the quantum transmission array. 27 people. When the last white-robed sword bearer entered the formation, the mystic sword spirit sneered disdainfully. The new generation of your Jerusalem is very strong. There are actually 27 sword bearers who are full of potential and powerful sword bearers. From the looks of it, after 20 years, you will have more than a dozen sword bearers of spirit sword bearers. Previously, in the notice given by Yanjing City to the various base cities, it was very clear that only sword bearers with great potential or strength, who could become a sword bearer of spirit sword bearer in the future, were qualified to enter the trial formation. Yuzhang City was lacking in talent, so they only picked 3 people to enter the array. Iwenjun had joined the array halfway, so he did not count. As for Yanjing City, because of the efforts of the major aristocratic families, they had forced some unqualified people into the city against their will. However, those aristocratic families still cared about their reputation, so the disciples they sent out were at least the best among the treasured sword bearers. There were more than 10 of them. On the other hand, Jerusalem had brought 27 treasure tier sword bearers. Did they really think that this training array was created by the ancestors of Jerusalem? Therefore, when it saw Jerusalem shamelessly bringing 27 people to participate in the trial, the confusion sword spirit immediately mocked him without holding back. They are the purest lambs of Allah. There is no reason for Allah to let any of them go. Avanti said. This was how the Jerusalem-based city behaved. Anyway, if there was a hat, it would be better to put it on Allah's head. The Chaos Sword Spirit still wanted to say something, but in the next moment, a ray of light suddenly shone from the teleportation formation, and then a bewildered swordsman appeared in the teleportation formation. Kung Fu, why did you come out? The Confusion Sword Spirit immediately recognized the swordsman who had been sent out. He was the treasured sword bearer of Yanjing City, Kung Fu. I am ashamed. I was unable to complete the task set by the training array, so I was directly sent out, Kung Fu replied shamefully when he heard the Confusion Sword Spirit's question. You were sent out so quickly. The Confusion Sword Spirit's expression was a little solemn. Although Kung Fu was the direct descendant of the Kong family, his own strength was among the top in the entire Yanjing City. He was not the kind of swordsman who relied on the power of the aristocratic families to force his way into the team. How could someone as powerful as him fail in just a few minutes? Kung Fu, let me ask you. What is the situation in the formation? Why were you sent out by the training array? One participant has failed and has been sent out of the formation. Guhan and Liuyan Ling, who were in the training array, suddenly heard Sky shrouding Jiandi's words. Turned out that the entire training array had a full channel system broadcast. Ling, didn't you say that we could have 7 days to study how to complete the trial task? Why was someone sent out so quickly? Guhan asked. I think it's strange too. Could there be some rules that we haven't discovered? Liuyan Ling shook her head. She turned her attention back to the 2 dice in front of her. One big and one small. Which one do you want to choose? Liuyan Ling's heart was beating a little fast. Although she had given the choice to Guhan, Liuyan Ling naturally wanted to pass this trial with Guhan. However, she didn't know how Guhan would choose. What if he didn't want to be with her? Wasn't she, Ling, sticking her cold face to his warm butt? Wait, why do I feel like something's wrong? When Guhan heard Liuyan Ling's words, he glanced meaningfully at Liuyan Ling. This caused Liuyan Ling to start panicking. This idiot wouldn't really choose the small die and part ways with me, would he? I'm afraid you'll starve to death. Gu-han coldly said these words, then very decisively picked up the big die, and threw out a big 6. Damn you! Who would starve to death? Liu Ling thought angrily. However, her heart instantly bloomed with joy. Gu-han and Liu Ling advanced another 6 squares. Their progress had improved a lot, but they were still surrounded by monotonous, empty squares. If someone with a phobia of loneliness were to come here, they would definitely be driven crazy by the environment. I wonder how far away we are from the final destination, Gu-han said blankly after the light wall surrounded them again. If this was a Monopoly game in real life, then the player would have a map of all the squares in real life and the distance to the final destination. Unfortunately, as a chess piece, Gu-han couldn't clearly see his current situation. If we calculate the distance in a straight line, we should still be 427 squares away. Unexpectedly, Liu Ling gave Gu-han an answer. Gu-han looked at Liu Ling and found that she was holding a handheld computer in her hand. It looked like a tablet computer from before the apocalypse. On the tablet computer, a huge map was clearly displayed. There was a red dot constantly flashing in one of the squares. That should be the square that Liu Ling was in. Why do you have such a thing? Ling, Gu-han asked. TSK, I've been here for almost 2 weeks longer than you. Is it strange that I have this map? Liu Ling said proudly. To tell you the truth, this is a reward from the item house. The item house is the best square in this trial ground. There's no need to fight, and there's no need for any strange challenges. You just have to draw an item. Unfortunately, my luck isn't good. I've only encountered the item house twice. Ling, let me have a look at your map. Gu-han took the map from Liu Ling and studied it carefully. He found that there were a total of 16 starting points on the map. These starting points all started as individual routes. Later on, they began to intersect in pairs. Finally, all the starting points converged into a single route. This was the only route that led to the finishing point. Gu-han's current position was about the first half of the route. There was an intersection point about 10 squares ahead. About 2 routes would intersect at this point and form a combined route. After 2 more combined routes, he would enter the final route. In short, if everything went smoothly and the result was a 6, he would have to cross at least 427 squares and roll the dice 72 times to reach the finishing point. This would take at least 2 or 3 days to complete. Ling, haven't you been here for 2 weeks and completed more than 40 trials? Why are you still stuck at this position? His current position was very far from the finishing point. It was more than 400 squares away. However, it was very close to the starting point, less than 100 squares. It was hard to imagine that Liu Ling had only advanced so little after spending 2 weeks. It's my fault, Liu Ling said unhappily. I keep encountering teleportation incident. What can I do when I'm teleported back to the starting point? I was originally less than 200 squares away from the finish line, but in the end I was teleported back here. Speaking of which, weren't you also teleported to this square? Gu-han was speechless. He was lucky enough to be teleported to a position more than 100 squares away from the starting point after advancing less than 10 squares. If he were to tell Liu Ling about this, Liu Ling would probably kill him in anger. The quest in the next room was very simple. Both Liu Ling and Gu-han were able to deal with it easily. But it was a pity that Gu-han had run out of luck. Unfortunately, Gu-han, who was in charge of throwing, seemed to have run out of luck. After throwing the number 1 several times in a row, he could only move forward 1 grid at a time. Although the trial quests he encountered were not difficult, the speed at which he moved forward suddenly dropped a lot. This continued until Gu-han threw the number 1 again and entered the next grid. Countless cards flew out from the small bar counter and circled around Gu-han and Liu Ling. The word event was written on the back of the cards. It was obvious that Gu-han and Fleeting Time had entered the event room again. Chapter 379. Unlucky B** starred, stop it. Looking at the floating cards in the room, Gohan was about to draw an event card, but he was stopped by Liuyan Ling. She probably felt that Gohan had thrown a few cards consecutively, which made Liuyan Ling feel completely hopeless about Gohan's luck. Then you do it. It didn't matter to Gohan who drew the card. Gohan didn't care about these details. But soon, Gohan regretted giving Liuyan Ling the opportunity to draw the card. If Gohan drew the card himself, he wouldn't even look at it. He would just pick the card closest to him. It was clean and simple, and it wouldn't even take a second. But for Liuyan Ling to draw the card, it was like a woman putting on makeup. In reality, she took out a compass to measure the position, then drew out the Carlo card to measure the luck, and finally took out the Book of Changes to calculate the metaphysic. In short, she made thousands of calculations and dilly-dallying for about 20 minutes before finally coming to a result. Gohan was a little puzzled. Why didn't he think that Liuyan Ling was so long-winded before? According to the final calculation, it seemed that there were 2 cards that were the best choices. Liuyan Ling hesitated for a long time, and finally drew the card closer to Gohan. Immediately, the rest of the cards flew into the small bar counter. Event card: encountering injustice. One of you accidentally fell into a manhole and both your legs were broken. Please choose a participant. He will lose the ability to move after 5 throws. What the hell is this? Liuyan Ling was so angry that she dropped the card in her hand on the ground. This was the card that she had painstakingly chosen? She had just said that Gohan was unlucky, and now she was slapping herself in the face. Liuyan Ling was angry. Gohan was expressionless after learning the contents of the card, but Liuyan Ling still felt that every little tadpole on Gohan's body was mocking her. What are you laughing at? It's all your fault. I wouldn't have chosen that card if it wasn't for the fact that it was closer to you. It's all your bad luck. Fleeting time. Ling tried to shift the blame to Yi Si. Well, you've made your choice, so you have to bear the consequences of your choice. Gohan pulled Liuyan Ling to his side and covered Liuyan Ling's mouth with his palm. A trace of manly breath flew from Gohan's fingers into Liuyan Ling's mouth, and Liuyan Ling suddenly became quiet. Is this the smell of Gohan's stinky guy? I feel a little intoxicated. There's obviously a bit of sourness in this smell. Liuyan Ling had some small calculations and small fantasies in her heart. Unfortunately, these small calculations and small fantasies didn't last long. They were ruthlessly shattered by Gohan's next sentence. You drew the card, so you have to bear the consequences yourself, Gohan said very calmly. Gohan, what do you mean? Are you going to break my leg? Are you even a man? Fleeting Cold was so angry that his hair stood on end. It was as if fire was about to erupt from his head. It's because I'm a man, so the one who breaks my leg must be you, Gohan said very seriously, but in the ears of Liuyan Ling, it was simply a joke. Are you kidding? Because it's a man, so the one who breaks his leg must be a woman? Since when was there such a logic in this world? Which country's logic came from? The Green Sect? Don't get excited, Ling. Gohan pressed his hands on Liuyan Ling's shoulders. I want to hold you, but I don't want you to hold me. Do you understand? What do you mean you hold me and I'll hold you? Liuyan Ling's ears began to turn red. This Gohan, why did he suddenly say such words? Isn't the change a bit too fast? Of course, if your leg is broken, then I have to hold you to continue moving forward. Gohan stroked Liuyan Ling's hair. I'm a man. How can I let you hold me? It's better to kill me. Oh. Liuyan Ling didn't speak. She felt that if she let Gohan hold her all the time, well, she was thinking about some messy things. But obviously, Liuyan Ling didn't want to argue with Gohan just now. Well, I'll take responsibility for my own actions. Let me, Ling, bear the pain of breaking my leg. After saying this, Liuyan Ling felt a distant pain passing through her leg bone. Then, she lost the strength to support her body and began to fall directly to the ground. Gohan reacted quickly. At the moment when Liu Ling was about to fall, he directly stretched out his arm to hold Liu Ling's waist. He held Liu Ling in his arms like a princess, so that Liu Ling's small face was pressed against his chest. Sure enough, it's more comfortable to be held. Smelling the scent of Gohan, Liu Ling couldn't help but want to fall asleep in his arms. Gohan smiled and released a sword energy to hit the die that appeared again. The die fell to the ground and finally rolled out a 6. It seemed that Gohan's bad luck had run out. However, in the next room, Gohan wasn't so lucky. The trial prompt on the small bar indicated that this was the most basic 3-star combat trial room. When Gohan's opponent, Yuan Ko, appeared, Gohan could only smile bitterly. This time, his opponent was actually an acquaintance. It was the Bronze Saint, Light Fong, who had voluntarily admitted defeat. Oh, what a coincidence! We meet again. Light Fong actually remembered Gohan. When he saw Gohan holding Liu Ling, he said enviously, "I haven't seen you for half a day, and you actually managed to hook up with such a beautiful girl." Gohan rolled his eyes. "You're just a memory fragment. What's there to be envious about? Can you hook up with a girl like that? So it's you and I fighting again." Gohan felt that this was pretty good. Previously, Light Fong had retreated without a fight when he met Heaven E. If Heaven E appeared again, the result would probably be the same. Yeah, my luck is a little bad. I originally wanted to vent my anger by teaching a few sword bearers a lesson. I didn't expect to meet Lady E again. Please release Lady E. As long as I see her, I can leave. Yes, everything seemed to be going smoothly. As long as he released Heaven E, he would be able to win. How simple. However, the prerequisite was that Heaven E was willing to fight for Gohan. If Heaven E didn't want to fight, then there would be a problem. Therefore, it went without saying that Heaven E refused to fight for Gohan. The reason was very good. Heaven E seemed to have fallen asleep. When Gohan called out to her through the sword mark, he could only hear the sound of her snoring. As for whether Heaven E was really asleep, it was a question of the benevolent and the wise. Forget it, I'll do it myself. Gohan shook his head. He planned to find a place to put Liu Ling down and use Heaven E to fight. So you're a sword master. No wonder you can control Lady E. Seeing Gohan standing against him with his sword, the Bronze Saint Seiya sighed in admiration. Then, he shrugged his shoulders apologetically, "Sorry, but when fighting against us memory fragments, sword bearers are not allowed to fight on their own." Why? Gohan was stunned. He couldn't fight on his own. Because I'm a memory fragment. I originate from the memories of the sword bearers. Light Fong smiled bitterly. Just like how vampires are afraid of light, we memory fragments are most afraid of coming into contact with real humans like you. Your bodies are like a whirlpool. The moment you come into contact with my body, the memories that make up my body will be absorbed into your brain. This way, our memory fragments will naturally weaken. You humans will also become mentally deranged because of the influx of memories from other species. If you're not careful, you might even become mentally ill. That's why the trial formation forbids us memory fragments from coming into contact with humans. We can only fight against your sword lady. If it's possible for your body to come into contact with me, I have the right to activate the formation and throw you out. You'll automatically be judged to have failed. Do you really want to do this? Light Fong's explanation was very detailed. Gohan wasn't stupid. He naturally wasn't willing to be thrown out just like that, so he gave up on fighting. But if he couldn't fight, and Heaven E wasn't willing to fight, then who else would be willing to fight? Gohan thought for a moment, then looked at Liu Ling in his arms and said, "Ling Ling, release your Heaven's Inquisition. My Heaven E isn't willing to fight, and I can't force her. Your Heaven's Inquisition's strength is second only to Heaven E and Fishbowl Sword, so defeating this Saint Seiya shouldn't be a problem." Heaven's Inquisition. Liu Ling blinked her eyes. When have you ever seen Heaven's Inquisition appear by my side? Indeed, when Liuyan Ling and Gohan were together, Heaven's Inquisition would always quietly follow by Liuyan Ling's side. Just like Qing Pin, it rarely stayed in the scabbard. But ever since he met Liuyan Ling, Gohan hadn't seen Heaven's Inquisition at all. Su Tianyuan, that coward, should have already told you. I was chased by an earth bear the entire way, and in my panic, I ran into the trial formation. Previously, in order to buy time for me to escape, Heaven's Inquisition risked damaging its blade to buy me 5 seconds of time. Only then could I escape into the formation. Unfortunately, Heaven's Inquisition's blade is already full of cracks, and its durability is probably only around 2%. Before Heaven's Inquisition is repaired, I can't let it come out to fight again. Liuyan Ling said in a low voice. It seemed like Heaven's Inquisition's injuries made Liuyan Ling feel very guilty and sad. After all, Heaven's Inquisition had become like this in order to protect Liuyan Ling. Heaven's Inquisition really can't participate in the battle. Gohan didn't expect Heaven's Inquisition to be in such a state. Of course, he wouldn't have any ideas on Heaven's Inquisition. But this way Gohan, Liuyan Ling, Heaven's Inquisition, and Heaven E, the 4 strongest combatants, couldn't fight against Guangya. The only ones who could fight were the ancient sword Grade Qing Pin sword and Liuyan Ling's Yi Xian sword. The Yi Xian sword was directly eliminated by Gohan. Once it was released, it might fight Liuyan Ling for 300 rounds. Why would it be willing to fight for Liuyan Ling? In other words, the only one who could fight was Qing Pin. Gohan narrowed his eyes and grabbed the hilt of Qing Pin's sword. He pulled her out of the scabbard, and with a flash of light, the cute Qing Pin appeared once again. She was grabbed by the soft flesh on her neck by Gohan. She looked at Gohan with puffy eyes and asked, "Gohan, is it time to eat?" But the strange thing was, it seemed like Qing Pin wasn't the only one who was pulled out. The other tiny thing was also hugging Qing Pin tightly, like a bunch of incense sticks. Together with Qing Pin, they were pulled out by Gohan. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.